Hey guys, tonight we begin our exploration of the 14th century and the life of a monk. This period was characterized by hardship and routine. Monastic life emerges as a subject of great interest. Monks dedicated their lives to spiritual service, but many elements made their existence quite challenging. The year is now 1350. A monk wakes in the early hours. The silence of the monastery envelops him. The air is cool. The stone walls hold the chill of the night. Monks sleep on simple straw mats. These mats provide little comfort. They offer minimal warmth. The monk feels a sense of unrest. Sleep was often elusive. Each dawn brought a new day of labor and devotion. The rising sun casts a pale light through the narrow window. The window is covered with thin, oiled cloth. This design allows some light in while keeping the cold air out. The monk opens his eyes slowly. Darkness fades. He glances around his small cell. It contains only a wooden chair, a small table, and a crucifix hanging on the wall. There are no luxuries. Each item in the cell serves a purpose. The monk recalls the night's prayers. He reflects on his commitment to the monastic life. According to records, monastic living conditions were often Spartan. Monk cells were small and bare. One could find straw mattresses or simple wooden beds. Monks were often not permitted personal belongings. Their lives focused on communal possessions. As the sun rises higher, the monk stretches his limbs. The chill penetrates his robe. The robe is made of coarse wool. It has been worn for several seasons. The wool is itchy and heavy. Clothing provides little warmth. It is designed for modesty rather than comfort. Monks often wore sandals made of leather, crafted by their own hands. The sandals offer little support during long hours of work. The morning does not bring a sense of luxury. The monk knows breakfast follows the morning prayers. According to historians, morning meals were simple and sparse. A bowl of porridge made from barley or oats may await him. The porridge is thin. It is served with water or weak ale. The monk is thankful for the meal. Such food sustains him for the day. Food preparation occurs in the monastery kitchen. Life within is regimented. Meals are shared among fellow monks. Silence surrounds the dining area during meals. Each monk reflects on their duties and faith. After his meal, the monk feels responsibility weighing on his shoulders. He knows the community tasks are numerous. His day will include tasks such as farming, gardening, and candle making. The monastery relies on the labor of its members. Each monk contributes to the daily functioning of the community. Hygiene practices were minimal during this time. Bathing was infrequent. Monks often washed their hands before meals. They understood the basics of cleanliness. Soap was made from fats and oils, along with lye. As the monk prepares for his duties, the sounds of the monastery fill the air. The distant clanging of bells signals the start of prayers. Monasteries often had large, heavy bells. They rang at various intervals during the day. The sound resonates through the stone corridors. It reminds all of the monastic schedule. The monk stands up. He feels the cool stone floor beneath his feet. It is hard and unforgiving. At the same time, monks endure physical hardship. They seek spiritual enlightenment through discomfort. Today, he has specific tasks. The community expects him to clear the fields. It is spring, and the growing season has begun. They rely on each monk's strength to succeed in the harvest. The monk makes his way along the corridor. He passes fellow monks. Each one moves in quiet focus. The air carries the scent of damp earth. Beyond the walls, the surrounding fields belong to the monastery. The labor is demanding yet essential. As he walks toward the chapel, the monk's thoughts linger on the day ahead. This is not a solitary path. Each monk has been trained to embrace a communal life. They rely on each other for support and accountability. In the chapel, prayers begin. The morning service lasts for several hours. The monks chant ancient hymns. The rhythm is repetitive. The atmosphere is solemn. Here, fellow monks gather together in worship. This is a foundational routine. The sound of chanting fills the air, creating a deep peace. The candles flicker softly. They cast shadows on the stone walls. Monks kneel on wooden benches. They bow their heads in prayer. Silent hopes for the day's work linger in their minds. As the prayers end, the monk rises. The atmosphere remains heavy yet tranquil. Now begins the toil in the fields. The monk exits the chapel and steps into the cool morning light. And now, slowly, one begins to rise from the mat, preparing for what comes next. The monk steps outside the chapel. The morning air feels crisp. A gentle breeze rustles the leaves on the nearby trees. He takes a moment to observe the landscape. The fields span far beyond the monastery walls. Fresh shoots of green emerge from the earth. This signals the beginning of another day of labor. The life of a monk centers around persistence. Each task represents a sacred duty. The day unfolds according to the rule of Saint Benedict. This structure dictates not only the order of activities but also the essence of monastic living. The monk walks toward the gardens. He prepares to tend to the communal plots. Early spring tasks encompass clearing weeds and loosening the soil. This work requires physical strength and endurance. Fresh vegetables provide sustenance for the community. Their growth is essential for maintaining health. Once in the garden, he kneels on the cool, damp earth. The soil crumbles beneath his fingers. It is rich and dark. Within the garden, sound is minimal. The distant songs of birds serve as a gentle backdrop. They punctuate the quiet routine of labor. The monk begins to pull weeds. Each weed removed offers a sense of accomplishment. The act of cultivating roots one's mind in the present. Each tug at the weed requires strength. It offers a moment of mindfulness. As he works, sweat beads form on his forehead. The sun rises higher in the sky. Its warmth contrasts with the chilled air of early morning. Throughout the day, other monks join in the labor. They do so in pairs or groups. Silence is often preferred, enhancing focus on the tasks at hand. Hours pass in this way. Each row of the garden gradually becomes clearer of weeds. The monk feels the rhythmic cycle of labor. This repetition comforts the mind. Monastic work is not merely physical. It nurtures spiritual growth. The connection between hands and earth reflects a deeper understanding of existence. After completing the gardening task, it is time for the first meal of the day. Typically, monks take their first meal after the morning chores. This meal often consists of simple porridge. The monk joins fellow community members in the refectory. In the refectory, the atmosphere is subdued. Conversations are rare. Monks focus on their food and share in silence. This abiding silence allows for reflection. Many use this time to contemplate spiritual matters. The porridge awaits in wooden bowls, prepared from barley and water. The texture of the porridge is coarse and grainy. Its color is an unappealing shade of pale brown. The taste is bland and lacks seasoning. Monastic rules govern food preparation strictly. These limits reflect the value placed on simplicity and humility. Excess is seen as a distraction from spiritual ascendance. As the monks eat their porridge, the scent fills the room. It is earthy, embodying the grains from which it was made. Eating in silence creates a shared experience. Each monk, whether young or old, absorbs the sustenance as both a physical and spiritual act. Following the meal, monks remain seated for a short time. They reflect on the nourishment received. It is a subtle reminder of the interconnectedness of body and spirit. After the meal, the customary practice involves another round of morning prayers. The bell above the refectory rings once more. It signals the return to the chapel. Monks rise slowly from their benches. Each movement echoes discipline. It is now time for communal worship to begin anew. The morning prayers last for a significant time. These prayers are part of a larger cycle. Monastic life is governed by the liturgy of the hours. This structure contains specific prayers throughout the day. Each prayer segment offers both individual and collective devotion. As the monks enter the chapel for the second time, they find their familiar places. The scent of candles lingers in the air, mingling with the musty odor of ancient stone. The flickering of candlelight casts soft illumination. It creates a reverent atmosphere. The monks once again gather and kneel. The ritual begins. The words of scripture flow from the mouths of the presiding monks. They chant rhythmically and recite psalms. The melodic tones reverberate throughout the chapel. Each sound intertwines with the anticipation of spiritual engagement. The duration of prayer is often exhaustive. Hours spent in worship become a common experience. For some, these extended periods can feel burdensome. However, the commitment to spiritual discipline lies at the heart of monastic life. Each monk knows this intuitively. As prayers conclude, the monks briefly meditate in silence. The tranquility envelops the space. Some monks find peace in this moment. Others consider the day ahead and its responsibilities. The bell rings once again, ending the time of silence. Stepping out of the chapel, the sunlight washes over the grounds. The day progresses toward noon. The monks regroup outside for the next collective task. They are assigned various chores within the monastery. The responsibilities continue to spill over into specific gardens, livestock, or other communal efforts. The monk returns to the fields for further labor. Today, the task includes clearing debris left from winter. This can be tiresome and tedious work. In their minds, each monk remains focused on their spiritual practice. Whenever possible, prayer begins to weave into the physical toil. The fields stretch across the horizon. They are integral to the monastery's sustenance. Each monk's contribution is vital. The interconnectedness of labor reinforces community ties. The shadows of trees provide respite from the midday sun. The sounds of nature are gentle components. Time passes slowly in the monastic world. Tasks require attention. There is little distraction, just the rhythm of the earth and labor. As the sun moves across the sky, the monk feels the passage of time. Each hour holds weight and significance. Lunch approaches. This meal typically mirrors breakfast. Monks gather once again in the refectory. The routine remains established. Silence persists as a guiding principle. They eat simply, digesting the labor and prayers of the day. After eating, and once more, they prepare for afternoon prayers. This cycle emphasizes both physical and spiritual nourishment. This duality roots them deeply in monastic tradition. The monk cherishes these rituals. The foundation laid through daily practices is vital to his faith. The communal life of the monastery remains a cornerstone. Each hour spent engages the mind and the soul in realization. As the afternoon unfolds, the weight of past labors feels apparent. The dual obligation to work and worship forms a heavier bond. Yet, it is a gentle burden. One of spiritual growth and understanding. The repetitive nature of each day weaves comfort. Such is the heartbeat of monastic life, unending and resolute. Now, we turn our attention to another aspect of daily life: the preparation for communal worship practices. A vital component of monastic existence that dictates not only the rhythm of the day but the very purpose for being within the cloistered walls. As the afternoon unfolds, the monks prepare for communal worship practices. This is an essential aspect of their lives, intricately woven into the fabric of daily routines. The time draws near for the evening liturgy. Monks gather in the church, a space that echoes with the reverberations of centuries of prayers. The building itself is austere yet painted with spirituality. High, vaulted ceilings create an atmosphere of both majesty and humility. The scent of aged wood and flickering beeswax candles fills the air. The monks take their positions in the choir stalls, each one seeking to align body and spirit with purpose. Evening prayers begin promptly, as prescribed by the rule of Saint Benedict. This structure governs nearly all aspects of monastic life. The monks chant in unison, voices rising and falling in melodic harmony. They recite the Psalms with a profound sense of collective devotion. Each monk focuses on the words, allowing the ancient texts to wash over them. The rhythm is steady, deliberate, and soothing, creating an almost hypnotic tranquility. The language of the prayers is Latin, a reflection of ecclesiastical tradition. The parchment from which the texts are drawn is well worn. Its texture is smooth and familiar under the fingers of the monks. As they read aloud, inked letters stand in stark relief, each marking a moment of devotion. Engaging fully in these prayers shapes their days and provides a point of contact with the divine. The services often last for hours. The length can feel interminable, yet they embrace this time as sacred. As prayers progress, moments of silence punctuate the chanting. In these pauses, the monks find stillness. The sounds of breathing, the shuffling of feet, and even the faint whispers of fabric against stone offerings a deep sense of presence. With each service, the liturgical calendar brings a rotation of themes and scripture. October, being the 13th month in the liturgical year, resonates with remembrance and reflection upon the saints. These themes anchor the monks' spiritual lives, inviting them to consider deeper mysteries. However, it is vital to note that the individual devotion often falls to the wayside. The communal aspect, designed to encourage unity, can impose certain limitations on personal expression. Monks may feel the weight of duty overshadowing individual aspirations within the structured teachings of the Church. Once the evening prayers conclude, there is a collective sigh of relief and satisfaction. The solemnity of the service deepens their sense of purpose. Monks return quietly to their chambers, the sounds of their steps muted on the cold stone floors. Their minds reflect on the evening's rituals, yet fatigue from the day's responsibilities weighs heavily upon them. As the sun sets and dusk settles, the cold can be more pronounced. Monastic cells provide little insulation against the chill. Each monk retreats into his personal quarters to reflect or study before retiring for the night. The cells, small and sparsely furnished, have little in the way of comfort. A simple wooden bed, a writing table, and a few basic artifacts suffice for meditation and contemplation. Monks often engage with theological texts during these moments of solitude. They may review treatises written by influential church fathers, creating a dusty scent of not just parchment but intellect. Each text presses upon their minds, urging them to explore their faith in greater depth. Some monks engage in manuscript writing, a skill requiring patience and precision. The act of copying texts demands extreme focus. One misplaced stroke could mean hours of toil wasted. The soft scratch of quill on parchment becomes a familiar sound in the quiet of the evening. In these solitary hours, some find respite through illuminating manuscripts. The use of gold and vibrant hues brings biblical stories to life. These images become vessels of spirituality, creating links between the physical and divine. Yet, despite such creative endeavors, the solitude may bring a sense of isolation. Once the candles begin to flicker, a signal that the evening is drawing to a close, monks prepare for rest. Each understands that the dawn will come quickly, heralding another day filled with labor and prayers. Transitioning from the stillness of thought to the necessity of sleep, they reflect on their vows of silence. The vow of silence is one of the more austere elements of monastic life. It can weigh heavily on the mind, creating an atmosphere where thoughts may spiral unchecked. Monks seek to cultivate inner peace, yet the restraint of speech often leads to intensive self-reflection. In this silence, they navigate deep emotional landscapes. The moment of introspection can reveal sadness, longing, and unfulfilled aspirations. Yet, the very intention of this vow is to allow clarity and spiritual growth. The hope lies in transforming solitude into an opportunity for deeper connection with the divine. Reflecting upon the vows and the disciplines enforced, one can observe the tension created by adherence to monastic rules. Established by Saint Benedict, these regulations serve as a guiding framework. Yet, they also confine monks to a structure that can feel restrictive. Timeliness becomes crucial, with specific hours dedicated to various activities. Penalties for breaking these sacred vows can be harsh, documented in countless monastic records. The consequences range from reduced rations to more severe methods of correction. These regulations ensure that discipline remains central to monastic life, yet they also create a culture of fear. This fear fosters an environment that stifles open inquiry and genuine expression of emotions. The weight of such regulations manifests differently among each monk. Some thrive within the confines of structure, while others find themselves chafing against its rigidity. Those who grapple with the rules may feel alienated. Their longing for personal expression often collides with the demands for conformity. As night deepens, the whispers of the day fade. The once spirited discussions of communal life give way to quietude. Gradually, the quiet strums the edges of consciousness. Each monk burrows deeper into his bedding, pondering tomorrow's purposes while finding solace in their rhythmic lives. Another day passes, filled with the routine of chores, prayers, and collective worship. These practices create a profound bond among monks, yet the shared experience often emphasizes their isolation. The connection to the divine, though vibrant in its essence, can lead to feelings of being lost in the crowd. Now, we will shift our focus to explore the stringent rules that govern daily life. Especially noteworthy are the vows taken by the monks and the expectations set forth through these regulations. These factors play a significant role in shaping not only their community life but also their individual spiritual journeys. The complex web of monastic regulations also encompasses the completion of daily tasks. Each monk's day unfolds within the bounds of the rule of Saint Benedict. One will arise from their humble bedding, often made of straw or coarse blankets. The time spent awake has begun for some as early as 2 a.m. Some may stumble groggily toward the chapel, their bare feet finding the cold stone floors of the passageway. This is the hour when dreams still linger, but duty beckons with urgency. As monks gather, they present themselves in a procession of simple robes, their muted colors reflecting their commitment to humility. These garments, made from homespun wool, cling to their bodies, offering minimal warmth against the penetrating chill of the monastery. Some monks clutch their robes tightly, as the gusts of air snake through the corridors. Sensing the sudden rush of cold, one feels the wisps of breath escape in visible puffs amidst the dim light of the flickering oil lamps, illuminating the ancient walls. The first sound that heralds the beginning of the day is the tolling of the bell. It resonates through the rafters of the chapel, a clear yet low note that fills each chamber. This signal, the summons to lauds, ignites a shared sense of duty among the monks, drawing them from the warm recesses of their cells to the cold stone church. Instances of mental preparation occur while attending to the discipline required for morning prayers. Within the chapel, the air is imbued with a blend of incense, candle wax, and the aroma of aged wood, creating a distinct atmosphere steeped in tradition. Monks kneel upon the gritty stone floor, their calloused knees meeting the cold surface. The rhythmic cadence of communal prayer begins. One would hear the chanting of psalms, melodic but solemn, intertwining with the echoing silence that pairs with the reverence of the moment. The weight of the vows taken is palpable here. Silence reigns supreme beside the orchestrated harmony of prayers. These spiritual regulations cloak the monks, dictating not only their duties but their very existence. Each monk is bound by vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. These tenets are unwavering, forcing them to confront their own aspirations while serving a higher purpose. The vow of silence looms particularly large, creating a barrier to personal interaction. For some, the vow of silence offers a respite from the noise of the outer world. Yet for others, it represents an insurmountable barrier that echoes the loneliness of their existence. In the cloistered retreat of their lives, unspoken words can pierce sharply. This silence fosters deep introspection, as monks consider the weight of their choices while grappling with the fears that accompany such solitude. Among chosen brethren, it is but a hum of acknowledgement, blindsided by the desire for expression. Once the prayers conclude, the daylight peeks timidly through the tiny, narrow windows. As monks shuffle into the refectory, each ponderously approaches the communal table. It is here they take their first meal of the day, an event steeped in ritual and discipline. In keeping with monastic customs, the breakfast consists of simple food, a porridge made primarily from barley and water. This dish, lacking in flavor and nutrition, becomes almost a symbolic reflection of the monastic existence. The texture of the porridge is gritty, rough against the tongue, devoid of sugar or any additional ingredients that might elevate or enrich the experience. The sound of spoons scraping against wooden bowls creates a dull reverberation in the quiet hall. This meal is brief yet solemn, allowing for moments of contemplation despite the lingering blandness. As the belly grumbles after consumption, these shared moments speak to the fundamental truth of monastic life: simplicity, yet sacrifice. Post-breakfast, each monk is assigned specific chores that must be completed throughout the day. These tasks range from tending to the gardens to maintaining the grounds of the monastery, each reflecting a devotion to labor and community service. Such manual labor is undeniably exhausting. The physicality of these chores contrasts with the expectations of spiritual focus, a duality that defines monastic life. One may find themselves laboring under the weight of heavy tools. Digging into soil, the earth is cold and damp, clinging to fingers raw from use. The conclusion of a chore often leaves one breathless, sweat dampening the robes once worn so neatly. Yet, these tasks are not devoid of merit. They are moments of meditation within the rhythm of labor, as silence envelopes the landscape around them. As the sun rises higher in the sky, warmth begins to caress the stone walls. Beneath the vast, open sky, the sounds of nature emerge. The soft rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze, alongside the occasional call of a bird, forms a serene backdrop. In this quietude, monks find themselves surrounded by evidence of God's creation, nudging thoughts toward a sense of peace. Time within this sanctuary of silence drifts slowly, with each tick of the clock echoing against the stone. Despite the simplicity of their surroundings, the physical strains of labor can take a toll. A double-edged sword forms, the aches and pains serve as reminders of the sacred bond between body and soul. Each task completed reverberates with a reminder of dedication, yet carries an undercurrent of exhaustion. The harshness of these physical demands can culminate in a longing for respite. The work, however, extends beyond the garden to the broader routines dictated by monastic life. Even amidst the tasks and chores, emotional and spiritual battles surface. The day's silence draws thoughts inward, where reflection hatches into quiet contemplation. Striving for inner peace amid either labor reveals the constant struggle of balancing the corporeal with the spiritual, an endeavor often laden with feelings of inadequacy. The hours spent laboring blur into the afternoon, the continued rhythm of responsibilities awaits. As manual chores conclude, the communal aspect of worship takes precedence once more in the daily cycle. Monks converge in the chapel where the next cycle of prayers waits for their devotion. The sights and sounds of gathering deepen the sense of belonging to a greater cause. Each step toward the chapel renews the commitment, echoing a cyclical return to purpose and responsibility. The air within the chapel has cooled, a testament to the passage of time. Again, the scent of incense mingles with the whisper of scriptures as theological texts come to life. The meticulous reading from parchment amplifies the gravity of their shared endeavor. In this space, the weight of words, once muted, transforms into historical significance. Long-held traditions anchor the monks to a legacy they embody in their existence. Collective prayer becomes a salve against the daily rigors. These moments uplift the spirit, juxtaposing the stiffness of routine with the hope for divine connection. An encounter with the sacred renders individuality insignificant in the face of a shared commitment to faith. Yet, this collective experience can oftentimes accentuate an inner isolation, as desires for personal connection are suppressed under the ambitions of spiritual devotion. As prayers are recited, the surrounding silence intensifies once more, wrapping itself around the monks like a soft cloak. Time seems fluid, elongating between the words spoken and the solemnity experienced. Even as the congregation creates a harmonious ensemble, the innate longing for sabbatical reflection remains unquenched, leaving many monks yearning for expressions of the soul constrained by the demand for rule-abiding. This continued sacrifice for the greater good places considerable mental strain upon the monks. The individuals who once sought solace through faith may find themselves faltering under the weight of expectations. The relentless rhythm of adhering to monastic life carries a price, each vow locks them within gilded chains forged of discipline. The internal dialogue of doubt often whispers insidiously, questioning if the vow offers freedom or builds a cage. Now, as another day drifts toward dusk, the whisper of evening approaches. Daylight dims, and with it, the cycle repeats as the monks prepare for the final prayers of the day. Hope mingles with the weariness occasioned by the harshness of life. This cyclical dance reflects an unchanging reality. The devotion demands recalibration with each passing moment, binding the individual to their community while they wrestle with belief and belonging. With the final prayers completed, the camaraderie forged in silence continues into often equally muted leisure moments. These hours, meager in comparison to the rigors of the day, afford a fleeting escape from the highly regimented existence. Monks retreat to the cloisters, seeking solace amidst the silent contemplation. The cloistered spaces resonate with a monotonal hum, the soft rustle of robes the only reminder of companionship. In these quiet hours, the muted sounds of nature penetrate more deeply, as one may hear the gentle whisper of the wind through trees. The flutter of leaves offers a soothing backdrop. The soft chirping of distant birds serves to reflect the symphony of solitude. In these moments, while some may resort to manuscript illumination or copying texts, others may simply sit with their thoughts. Some monks may immerse themselves in the delicate strokes of ink, crafting meticulously illuminative manuscripts. The smooth, velvety feel of parchment under the nimble fingers creates an intimate connection with their art. The ink, dark and rich, brings vibrancy to the silent conversations held upon the page. Yet, for others, this solitude emphasizes a feeling of isolation, a divergence between one's internal world and the silence enveloping their physical surroundings. These periods of reflection emphasize both the bond and the chasm felt in monastic communities. Interstitial moments burst forth with yearning for discourse, only to dissolve into an unyielding silence. It is in this silence that they confront their personal struggles while eagerly holding on to the hope of divine presence. As night enfolds the monastery, the certainty of another day looms overhead. The textures of daily life blend into an indistinguishable haze. The burdens carried through each moment echo into the quietude. The struggles faced behind closed doors meld together to create communal narrative threads that persist through the ages. In acknowledging the unchanging wheel of solitude, we observe these monks, men wrapped in silence punctuated by the sacred. Therefore, we shall now turn our attention to the meager leisure time given to these devoted souls. This brief interlude within their day leads to a complex tapestry of reflection and creation. As each task unfolds, the rhythm of life continues unimpeded. And so, another day passes, echoing with the cadence of duties. The same routines persist, forming a consistent cycle. The persistent energy of devotion remains unbroken, shaping their identities as custodians of a legacy too rich to be forgotten. After moments of solitary introspection within the cloister, the monks would be stirred from their introspective reverie by the melodic chime of bells signaling the time for their next obligation. The day continued without hesitation. These bells, typically crafted from bronze, rang with a deep resonance, drifting through the cold, stone walls that encapsulated their lives. With each resonant toll, it beckoned them from their quietude into the routine of communal activities. One might observe the monks emerging from their small, sparsely furnished cells. Each monk donned the same plain woolen habit, its fibers itchy against their skin, a constant reminder of their vows of humility and simplicity. The chill of the early morning air bit at their exposed skin as they congregated in the common area, preparing for the first meal of the day. Breakfast, known as the first refectory meal, was a modest affair. The bread served was often stale, baked from coarse barley flour. The scent of warmth filled the air, mingling with the dampness that clung to the stone floors. There was no adornment on the tables, no plates or utensils that might signify opulence. Simply wooden boards laid side by side, representing the communal bond the monks shared. They would gather in silent reverence, acknowledging the sustenance before them with a prayer. The usual offering consisted predominantly of porridge, a simple mixture of barley and water heated to a lukewarm consistency. As they sat upon the hard benches, they prepared to consume their meager portions. The texture of the porridge was gritty, lacking even a modicum of sweetness. Each spoonful was met with an absence of flavor, drawing forth a monotonous routine of chewing and swallowing. The collective silence enveloped the room, only interrupted by occasional coughs or quiet rustlings. Finishing quickly, the monks would rise in unison, their feet padding softly against the stone floor. After this austere meal, they would disperse to their assigned tasks for the morning. These chores were not merely duties, they bore deep significance in the monastic framework, fostering a sense of discipline that permeated every aspect of their lives. Many were tasked with tending the monastery gardens. Such labor required rising early to ensure the tender plants flourished in their humble plots. Gardener monks labored alongside each other, their hands digging into the earth, a feel reminiscent of life's inherent cycles. They would cultivate vegetables, herbs, and flowers, often bringing the fruits of their labor back to the refectory. The aroma of fresh earth filled their nostrils, a fleeting reminder of the beauty found within nature's simplicity. During these hours of labor, one could witness the smooth contours of various tools, the spades, hoes, and rakes, all essential to the monastic agricultural existence. The sound of tools rhythmically hitting the ground created a quiet meditative atmosphere, broken only by the occasional call of a distant crow or the gentle whisper of wind rustling through trees. As morning shadows lengthened, the heads of the monastery would call for a return to the sacred space. The monks would gather once more in the chapel for the next series of liturgical prayers. The transition was almost seamless. One moment they were working in silence amidst the sun-kissed gardens, and the next they were enveloped by the cool, dark interior of the chapel. Here, prayer took precedence. Hours were dedicated to the divine office, a structured sequence of prayers meant to sanctify the day. The liturgical services were ceremonious and lengthy, often extending for several hours. The scent of candle wax mingled with the musty aromas of time-worn wood, filling nave and sanctuary alike. The readings, delivered in soft tones, mainly comprised theological texts rich in ecclesiastical significance. Each scripture was carefully chosen, the passages weighed heavily upon the monks' shoulders. The words resonated off the stone walls, echoing their importance throughout the ages. Within this sacred space, the communal aspect of worship became evident. One could see rows of monks aligned by the flickering light, their expression solemn but reflective. The atmosphere thrummed with the shared rhythm of prayers, as voices rose and fell together in unison like waves in a vast sea. Yet, amidst this camaraderie, shadows of individual solitude lingered, as each monk confronted his own internal challenges, isolated even in the presence of many. As the prayers began to wind down, the rigid structure of the day pressed onward. The monks were bound by the rule of Saint Benedict, which dictated not only their spiritual practices but also their daily lives. These rules established firm guidelines, from the time of rising to the sanctity of silence, shaping their identities as members of this cloistered world. Each infraction was met with consequences. Punishments ranged from regulating silence further to manual labor, such as additional time in the gardens. The penalties were intended to encourage a return to behavior aligning with monastic values and discipline. Illustrative records from various monastic communities of the time document such instances, capturing the struggles inherent in maintaining fervent devotion amid human frailties. With the conclusion of morning prayers, the monks were allowed a short period of rest. This time was not for leisure as others might perceive it. Instead, it was an opportunity for personal contemplation and reflection. Meditative actions filled this sacred hour. Some would walk quietly in the cloisters, cherishing the solitude that echoed between walls built many years prior. The sound of fabric brushing against the stone floors became a familiar soundtrack of their environment. Other monks utilized this time in their solitary cells. They sat upon cold wooden stools, contemplating their journey and struggles. In these moments of quiet reflection, they sought clarity amidst the clarity of infinity. Their thoughts, though profound, were often met with the constraints of the monastic code. Even solitary leisure remained steeped in restrictions. As the hour of mid-morning approached, the monks would prepare for yet another cycle of duties. They knew their responsibilities awaited them. However humble, these tasks played an indispensable role in the larger tapestry of monastic life, a life dedicated to service, worship, and contemplation. Now we arrive at the life of a monk from a historical perspective, examining the significant figures within this realm. Among them is Bernard of Clairvaux. Born in 1090, he became an illustrious leader influencing monastic practices into the 14th century. His early life in Burgundy fostered a deep affinity for spiritual pursuits. Influences during his youth paved the path for his eventual dedication to the monastic realm. Historians often remark upon Bernard's fervent advocacy for the Cistercian order, established to infuse a stricter ascetic life by promoting simplicity and sincerity. His writings reflect the rich inner life intricate with the challenges faced in his era. His decisions illuminated the profound interconnectedness between monasticism and societal issues. As we transition to his story, we delve deeper into the contours of 14th century monastic life. The trials faced by monks like Bernard carry echoes of the collective hardships within this sacred existence. Through their lives, we find threads that connect the burdens, aspirations, and enduring legacies of these dedicated souls. Thus, we shall now shift our focus to the intricate life of Bernard of Clairvaux, examining how it intertwined with the monastic narrative reflective of struggles faced by so many during the 14th century. Now we shall turn our attention to the life of a monk, reflecting upon the legacy of Bernard of Clairvaux. Born in 1090, in the village of Fontaine-les-Dijon in Burgundy, France, Bernard was the third of 7 children in a noble family. His upbringing provided him with foundational experiences and influences that ultimately guided him toward monasticism. The social and cultural context of his youth was steeped in the values of devotion and piety. Bernard entered the monastery of Citeaux in 1112. His choice marked a pivotal shift in his life. At Citeaux, he embraced the Cistercian lifestyle, which sought to promote a return to simplicity and strict adherence to monastic rules. His early days as a novice were characterized by rigorous ascetic practices. A novice's routine involved early morning prayers, intense labor, and silent contemplation. During his time as a novice, Bernard's health suffered due to the demanding regimen. Historical records indicate he faced severe challenges. He endured both the emotional struggle of adjusting to monastic life, alongside the physical trials of the rigorous tasks expected of him. The Cistercian system stressed the importance of communal living and shared burdens. This philosophy remained central to Bernard's experience. As Bernard progressed in his journey, he earned the respect of both peers and superiors. His dedication and fervor culminated in his appointment as the abbot of a new monastery in Clairvaux, which he founded in 1115. This establishment became a focal point for the Cistercian reform movement. His leadership echoed the community's intrinsic value in pursuing a life of contemplation and labor. At Clairvaux, Bernard implemented many aspects of the Cistercian ideal. The monastery became known for its austere lifestyle. Bernard and his fellow monks engaged in agriculture and manual labor, fortifying their connection with the land. This practice not only provided sustenance but also fulfilled their spiritual obligations through humble work. They cultivated barley and oats, which were used for bread and porridge, the staple fare of the monastic diet. Bernard's early writings began during this period as abbot. Among his works, On the Consideration of the Love of God reflects his theological musings. The manuscript's ink, smeared with dedication, conveyed deep emotional intensity. His writings exhibit a yearning for understanding divine love while navigating the struggles of monastic existence. Tensions with the secular world were ever present. In 1130, a schism erupted within the papacy, with rival factions vying for control. Bernard promptly became a prominent figure in ecclesiastical politics. His profound influence extended beyond Cistercian circles. He sought to establish legitimacy and harmony within the Church. This endeavor often necessitated engagement with powerful nobles seeking to further their ambitions. In the following years, Bernard played a crucial role in several key events impacting the Church. He was enlisted to promote the Second Crusade in 1145, advocating for the liberation of the Holy Land. His impassioned sermons, filled with fervor, drew considerable attendance. The pictorial imagery in his speeches inspired numerous warriors to join the campaign. Bernard's ability to intertwine spirituality with action resonated profoundly with his audience. His efforts, however, were met with mixed results. Records reveal the disastrous nature of the crusade. Many expedition members returned dispirited and disillusioned. Yet, his intentions for positive change lingered in the hearts of those who had experienced his magnetic presence. Despite the hardships of the crusade, Bernard's zeal for reform persisted. Throughout the subsequent decades, Bernard's contributions diversified. His theological writings tackled intricate subjects such as grace, love, and the soul's journey toward God. In his later years, he penned the Steps of Humility and Pride, which outlined the necessary virtues for spiritual ascent. This text highlighted the internal struggle faced by monks, their striving toward humility, and the potential perils of pride. Now we shall delve deeper into the trials encountered by Bernard. His experiences were emblematic of the struggles faced by many monks during this period. The emotional and physical toll of monastic life created a landscape marked by hardships. Wrestling with loneliness and doubt, they sought solace in spiritual teachings. Monastic records frequently document this turmoil, as the balance of ambition and desolation entwined. Moreover, Bernard's life serves as a window into the broader monastic experience during the 14th century. The commitment to the rule of Saint Benedict, emphasizing discipline and community, influenced monks' daily lives. The hardships encountered were manifold. Records from various monasteries illustrate an environment steeped in strict adherence to routine. Monks were often referred to as the service of God. This phrase captures the essence of their existence, a life dedicated to unceasing rituals and continual labor. Bernard's own interactions with fellow monks shaped his outlook on spirituality. His experience within the communal framework allowed him to witness both the strength and frailty of human connections. These relationships underscored the significance of shared experiences amid personal struggles. Perhaps cycling through toil and prayer reinforced their commitment to the community. Yet, the rigidity of monastic life posed psychological challenges. The vow of silence, although intended to foster contemplation, often led to feelings of isolation. The strict adherence to silence was a prominent aspect of Bernard's monastic experience, reflecting broader societal expectations within ecclesiastical culture. Records illustrate instances where monks confided their yearning for communication yet adhered to silence to deepen their bond with God. As we explore Bernard's legacy, his impact upon the Cistercian order continues to resonate. His thoughts on the nature of divine love profoundly influenced the course of medieval spirituality. Bernard's teachings became central to later theological discussions, reverberating through the generations. Their essence remains foundational to the understanding of faith in its many expressions. The notable moments in Bernard's life culminated in his passing on August 20, 1153. His death saw widespread mourning within the monastic community and the Church. He had become a pivotal figure, known for his compassion, insight, and fervor. In his death, the struggles of the 14th century monk found representation in the profound legacy he left behind. As we conclude this examination of Bernard of Clairvaux, his life exemplifies the trials faced by monks who strove to balance duty, faith, and personal struggle. With an unwavering commitment to service, he managed to navigate the complexities inherent in monastic life. His narrative persists, allowing us to reflect on the monumental struggles faced by those dedicated to the spiritual path. Now we shall continue to explore the complexities of Bernard's journey as we take a closer look at his monastic journey and how it shaped both his contributions and the broader monastic narrative. Bernard's decision to join a monastery unfolded with considerable thought and reflection. He made his choice during a period rich in spiritual fervor, stepping into a life flourished by dedication and labor. Following his family's wishes, he entered the Cistercian monastery of Cîteaux in 1113, influenced by the aspirations of reform within the Church. As a novice, Bernard engaged in a rigorous training regimen designed to cultivate humility and piety. Early mornings were a hallmark of his training. Rising before dawn required a deep commitment to the monastic schedule. Candles flickered to life, illuminating his modest cell as he donned a simple tunic, woven from coarse fabric. This garment served as a constant reminder of his vow of poverty. The chill of the stone walls was a stark reminder of the sacrifices he made to join the brotherhood. His day began with communal prayer. The clanging of bells echoed through the corridors of the monastery, signaling the start of a new day, a time when silence would soon be punctuated by the sounds of worship. Brother Bernard would join his fellow monks in the abbey chapel for the recitation of the divine office. Here, they vocalized hymns and prayers, their voices rising towards the lofty ceilings adorned with muted frescoes. The act of communal worship was both uplifting and arduous. Brothers would spend hours in devotion, their bodies pressed against the cool stone of the chapel. Records indicate that the monks of Cîteaux adhered strictly to the hours of prayer outlined by the rule of Saint Benedict, which prescribed 7 daily prayers interspersed with periods of labor. Throughout the long hours spent reciting scripture, the scents of candle wax and incense mingled, creating an ambience of solemnity. By midday, the routines continued under the guidance of the rule, ensuring that the monks fulfilled their duties while engaging in meaningful labor. Bernard's initial assignments often included the most physically demanding tasks within the monastery. He learned to till the soil and cultivate gardens, planting rows of vegetables essential for sustenance. He would feel the earth crumble between his fingers, the smell of damp soil releasing nutrients into the air. Chores were extensive and unyielding, often exhausting, demanding great physical exertion. The task of maintaining monastic lands tested his resolve. As Bernard worked alongside seasoned monks, he discovered the importance of fellowship found in shared toil. The rhythmic sound of hoes striking the earth created a meditative atmosphere. Laughter and conversation were scarce, given the vow of silence, yet the silence itself fostered contemplation. Bernard's immersion into monastic life was devoid of modern comforts. His living quarters were austere. The stone cell, furnished only with a narrow bed of straw and a simple table, symbolized a lifestyle stripped of excess. Records suggest that cells were designed to eliminate distractions, reinforcing the essence of focused devotion. The cold stone floors chilled his feet, a sensation that lingered long after his daily labors ended. Food was meager, typically limited to simple fare. Meals were communal events marked by a sense of solemnity. Bernard partook in a porridge of barley and occasional vegetables. The texture was coarse, lacking in flavor or variety. Dietary restrictions further complicated their relationship with food. The monastic vow of abstinence often left them hungry, merely sustaining their energy through long hours of work and prayer. In this context, mealtimes became another opportunity for reflection, though the nature of the food remained a humble affair. Evening would bring forth more rituals. Monks gathered again for Vespers, a time imbued with deep spirituality. The fading light of day cast shadows, illuminating the chapel's walls as hymns and prayers resonated through the air. The atmosphere turned contemplative, as the structures of daily life gave way to introspection. Sacrifice and devotion converged once more in prayer, echoing through familiar hallways. The physical exhaustion accumulated day by day, serving as a crucible for spiritual growth. Job assignments shaped not only Bernard's daily routine but his understanding of God's intricate design and grace. It was through labor that he hoped to grasp the broader significance and purpose of his calling. Yet, within the context of such devotion and productivity, Bernard faced conflicts typical of a novice. The pressure to conform weighed heavy on his shoulders. He struggled with the strict regulations that demanded unwavering commitment to the lives they led. Many monks found themselves battling in a turmoil, torn between their commitment to faith and their innate human desires. In silence, Bernard harbored ambitions for spiritual ascendancy. From historical accounts and monastic records, we learn that his aspirations were often difficult to actualize given the contours of monastic life. The study of scripture consumed much of his mind, and he felt torn between rigorous adherence to monastic silence and the passion for theological discussion. These experiences shaped his writings profoundly, serving as a backdrop for the struggles faced by many monks seeking divine connection. As he settled into the ever-repeating cycle of life, Bernard's training continued. With guidance from his superiors, he was introduced to theological texts, heavy with the scent of parchment. The texts lay open on simple wooden tables, their weighty messages reflecting the theological currents of the time. The struggles he faced within the walls of the monastery provided insights that would later flourish in his teachings. The challenges of daily life were underscored by the structure outlined in the Rule of Saint Benedict, which demanded discipline and adherence to a strict schedule. Daily routines offered little time for personal reflection. Yet, those moments existed. Bernard and his fellow monks would find brief interludes during their recesses. In the cloisters, amid the quiet rustling of leaves, they engaged in gentle solitude. These moments provided scant relief, steeped between the heavy responsibilities defined by their vows. As Bernard advanced through the ranks within the monastery, he developed a reputation for hard work and dedication. His commitment to contemplative practices was enhanced by physical labor. The arduous tasks reflected his evolving understanding of faith. Records document Bernard leading monastic discussions during rare moments of leisure. They suggested muted images of camaraderie, cloisters filled not with the sounds of merriment, but with the hushed tones of theological dialogues. Amid the restrictions, the wisdom imparted during these clandestine discussions enriched their spiritual understanding. Through his experiences, it became evident that Bernard's journey mirrored the collective journey of those within the cloistered world. His dedication to learning, coupled with the struggles of daily monastic existence, prepared him for eventual leadership. The transition from a novice to a prominent figure in the Cistercian order was gradual, yet inevitable. Eventually, he would find himself influencing a movement, steering the course of monastic life toward deeper spiritual introspection. As we consider Bernard's journey, it is essential to reflect on the broader context of monasticism during the 14th century. His path undoubtedly echoed the experiences of countless monks dedicated to a life governed by strict rules and routines. The blending of labor, prayer, and communal life paints an intricate portrait of existence within the monastery. These rituals left a profound impact on their identities. In closing, Bernard's early experiences in monastic training were integral to shaping his contributions and ideals. He became not only a servant of faith but also a vessel for spiritual reform. As we transition to examining his contributions and the intricate dynamics of ecclesiastical challenges, we shall witness how these experiences informed his actions, molding him into a pivotal figure of the time. As Bernard settled into the intricacies of monastic life, he recognized the crucial role of communal worship. Daily prayers formed the backbone of existence within the monastery. The set times for prayer structured the rhythm of life, creating a constant interplay between labor and spirituality. Each session required deep focus, drawing from the weight of theological texts that carried the scent of aged parchment and ink. The harmonious flow of Gregorian chants resonated through the monastery, intertwining devotion with discipline. The liturgical services began with lauds at dawn, marking the transition from the cold of night to the clarity of day. Monks assembled in the dimly lit chapel clutching their worn prayer books. The candlelight flickered gently, casting shadows against the stone walls. Attending these services required diligence, as the prayers could last for hours. Various psalms were recited, reflecting the spiritual struggles of mankind. The monks recited phrases, their voices rising and falling in unison, a slow, rhythmic cadence that created a meditative atmosphere. After lauds concluded, the monks turned their attention toward reading theological works. These texts were often hefty tomes that contained the teachings of early church fathers. Each meticulous read-aloud session was punctuated by the sound of turning pages, the rustle of parchment mingling with the echo of solemn voices. These quiet gatherings served not only as a source of knowledge but also as opportunities to cultivate a deeper understanding of faith. The silent presence of one another fostered a shared experience, even in contemplation. Despite the communal aspect, inner solitude remained significant. Individual devotion still called to the hearts of many. Monastic records indicate that moments between prayers allowed for personal reflections. Yet, the strict schedule left little time for extended solitary pursuits. The demands of daily rituals created a steady pressure, causing some monks to grapple with the challenge of finding personal spiritual expression amid the collective practices. Issues arose when conflict emerged between individual desires and communal expectations. Strains within the community began to surface, particularly concerning religious reform. The Church sought to address moral decay and the perceived overindulgence among its leaders. This led to distress and upheaval, highlighting the precarious balance between aspiration and the reality of monastic discipline. Bernard, observing the struggles around him, felt a growing urgency to address these concerns. He soon found himself delving into the historical texts, extracting insights that echoed the teachings of monastic tradition. His studies formed the foundation for his influential writings, which aimed at guiding both monks and laypeople. Written records reveal that his works were often inspired by the contradictions between the ideals of monastic life and the realities faced by those within the ecclesiastical institution. The truth he championed sought to reconcile faith with the values espoused by Christ. Through writings, he emphasized the necessity of a spiritual life rooted in humility and poverty. This call resonated deeply during a time when material wealth threatened to overshadow the core tenets of Christianity. Historians note that his advocacy for austerity sparked dialogues among monks eager for reform. His writings traveled far beyond the boundaries of his monastery, influencing the discourse of the Church. Discussions of his contributions appeared in synods, where clergy debated and grappled with the implications of his teachings. Notably, one of Bernard's significant contributions was the elucidation of the concept of divine love. His influential treatise on loving God discussed how love transcended material reality and focused on spiritual union with God. This essential work has survived through the centuries, showcasing how these theological discussions transformed into tangible practices. Monks began to incorporate Bernard's ideas into their communal practices, yet the collective adherence to simplicity often tangled with individual desires. The task of finding this balance proved to be intricate. Monastic records indicate that some monks clung to traditional views while others followed the more progressive reforms introduced by Bernard. These tensions sparked various debates within the cloisters, leading to harsh feelings among the community. Records reveal that conflicts sometimes escalated to vocal disagreements during gatherings intended for unity. The penalties laid out in the Rule of Saint Benedict for such infractions were feasible, serving to remind the monks of their commitments. Observations show that those who strayed from the rules faced penalties ranging from simple admonitions to more severe disciplinary measures. Such restrictions placed on individual behaviors underscored the weight of governance within the monastic walls. The very framework of daily life hinged on strict adherence to laws designed to encourage devotion. However, the rigidity of these laws also imposed significant psychological strain. Bernard, through his writings, expressed concerns regarding excessive punishment. He condemned harsh measures that tended to alienate rather than bring about repentance. The quiet sense of isolation that enveloped some monks stemmed partially from these stringent practices, leading to a longing for a more compassionate interpretation of their vows. As debates surrounding reform intensified, Bernard grappled with how to lead and inspire a stalled movement within the Church. His tumultuous interactions with other religious leaders often revealed broader ecclesiastical tensions. He engaged with popes, clergymen, and nobles alike, navigating the complex political landscape that surrounded the Church. Records indicate that in 1123, he attended the Council of Pavia, advocating the ideals of the Cistercian order during a period marked by the struggle against corruption. Witnesses noted Bernard's eloquence and ardent passion during these occasions. His capacity to articulate theological insights alongside practical reform effort garnered respect among many. Yet, the insights he shared during these discussions were not without opposition. His views on simplicity brought him into conflict with those who profited from the Church's wealth. It is documented that disputes arose between him and other influential clergy, especially when they focused on worldly possessions, an aspect opposed to the humble life Bernard championed. As Bernard's influence expanded, his conflicts did not deter him. Instead, they reinforced his commitment to ecclesiastical reform and spiritual renaissance. He was aware that the seeds of change often needed to be sown amid adversity. Initially viewed with skepticism by some, his perseverance enabled him to foster a movement that grew amongst the ranks of the Cistercians. It is essential to acknowledge the broader impact of Bernard's contributions. Each theological position established by him was rooted in the rich soil of monastic challenges. He embodied the struggles faced by countless monks during the 14th century, as he sought to navigate the complexities of faith, dignity, and community. His teachings transcended the constraints of time, nurturing future generations of monks who would continue to wrestle with the core issues that plagued their predecessors. With Bernard's life drawing to a close, we now observe the profound imprint he left on the monastic landscape, which would shape the contours of future church practices and beliefs. His passing in 1153 marked the end of one chapter of monastic history but heralded the beginning of another, as his teachings endured, echoing through tile and stone. The challenges he confronted and the controversies he navigated contributed significantly not only to his legacy but to the evolution of monastic ideals. The reflections upon his life help to unveil a more considerable truth about monasticism. he emerged as a pillar of resilience and reform, illustrating the intricate dichotomy of aspiration within the cloistered life. His experiences did not exist in isolation, rather, they resonated with a collective consciousness that sought to reconcile faith with daily existence. Thus, we consider how Bernard's journey culminated in a life of perseverance against constraints weighted by the vow of community living. His legacy serves as a reminder of the collective struggles faced during the 14th century. Yet the call for reform echoed through the ages, influencing the spiritual landscape for generations yet to come. With a sense of reverence, we now turn our attention away from Bernard to contemplate his broader legacy. The imprint of his life on subsequent generations of monks reshaped monastic practices and forged an enduring bond between past and future. As we delve into the continuing effects of his teachings, we shall witness how these ideals informed the intricate tapestry of monastic life, reflected in the experiences of monks who sought to navigate their own trials. In the context of Bernard's enduring influence, we reflect on the life he led. It is essential to grasp that his legacy was not merely a personal one, it extended outward, intertwining with the fabric of monastic life across Europe. The devotion expressed by him resonated within the walls of monasteries that had risen during the 14th century. These institutions became critical nodes for the dissemination of knowledge, spirituality, and reform. Monks during this time, perhaps enthralled to the vision that Bernard had laid before them, found themselves grappling with the essence of their existence within the cloisters. They maintained rigorous routines, much like the one Bernard himself adhered to during his life. Each day began with early morning prayers, often dictated by the lighting of candles and the flickering glow upon the ancient stone walls. The chill in the air hung heavy as the dark hours stretched on. As the sun began to rise, it unveiled the stark realities these monks faced, which remained consistent across the various monastic orders. A monk's day frequently started with the ringing of bells. These signals dictated not just a start to the day but a call to awaken the spirit. Monastic regulations were detailed in the Rule of Saint Benedict, which organized the rhythm of daily life around prayer, work, and communal living. The bells would sound around 2 a.m. to 3 a.m., reverberating through stone corridors, guiding monks toward the chapel. This symphony of sound became an integral part of their waking world, echoing through their mornings. Upon leaving their cells, monks would file into the dimly lit chapel. The aroma of burning beeswax drifted in the air, mingling with the musty scent of the ancient manuscript pages housed nearby. Prayerful recitations filled the silence, as monks devoted significant portions of the day to chanting the divine office. This commitment to liturgical practices could consume 5 to 6 hours daily, shaping the structure of life within the monastery. After prolonged prayers that demanded focus and endurance, the communal breakfast would follow. This too lacked the variety contemporary people might expect. The meal typically consisted of a simple porridge made from barley and water. Records indicate that barley provided essential nutrition, though its taste was notably bland. Monks ate quietly, adhering to the vow of silence that governed their interactions. The rhythmic sound of wooden spoons scraping against earthenware bowls punctuated the stillness. Eating was an act of necessity, performed in harmony with the silence of reflection. Once breakfast concluded, the day's labor would commence. Monks were assigned specific chores, often requiring them to tend to gardens or participate in farming activities. These responsibilities were integral not just for self-sufficiency, but also served as acts of devotion and service to God. Each task mirrored their inner quest for spirituality. From the arduous labor of plowing fields to the meticulous maintenance of herb gardens, each service bore witness to an essential aspect of monastic life. The sun would rise higher, casting shadows across the now bustling grounds, filled with communal endeavors. Monastic work was often laborious and unyielding, imparting lessons in humility and perseverance. Light filtered through the trees, the cool earth underfoot contributing to a serene yet labor-filled atmosphere. History recounts how these tasks required significant physical strength, remaining a cornerstone of daily existence. Monks would engage with soil, seed, and growth, creating a tangible connection to the world outside their walls. Amidst these labors, a palpable quietness enveloped the atmosphere. The silence, punctuated by distant calls of birds or the whisper of wind through the leaves, absorbed the sweat of their labor. Such stillness provided fertile ground for contemplation. Each chore allowed monks to immerse in their thoughts, reflecting on spiritual matters, perhaps inspired by the very writings that populated the library's shelves. As the day unfolded, attention would shift toward communal worship once again. Monks gathered for vespers, an evening prayer that often evoked a moment of collective reflection on the day's work. The flicker of candlelight illuminated the faces of those present, revealing a blend of resolve and weariness. Within the pages of their sacred texts, they found guidance, the scent of parchment mingling with hope and aspiration. But attending these prayers was not merely about individual piety, it represented the essence of community. Each voice added to the growing tapestry of faith, each prayer a thread woven into the shared life experienced within the cloisters. Despite the vow of silence, there was strength in solidarity. The communal obligations clashed with a deep yearning for personal connection to divinity, burdened by the weight of expectations echoed in the monastic rules. In stark contrast to the rigors of worship emerged the harsh realities of upholding the monastic lifestyle. Many monks were forced to adhere particularly strictly to the rule of Saint Benedict, which imposed a sense of discipline and timeliness. Breaches of these rules often resulted in repercussions documented in monastic annals. The mental weight of striving to conform could be heavy, creating an internal tension within those seeking spiritual ascendance. As the day wore on, the sun began its descent, coloring the sky in hues of orange and purple. Monks would partake in their final meal of the day, typically a light supper composed of vegetables, perhaps gruel or stale bread. Meals were prepared with modesty, echoing their commitment to a life of simplicity. Each mouthful taken was a reminder of their vows, as much a reflection of faith as a matter of sustenance. Following the evening meal, some monks dedicated time to study or illumination. The quiet hours brought a chance for scholarly pursuits within the confines of candlelit chambers. They might find themselves engrossed in the beauty of letters and scripts, each stroke of ink a meditation on divine principles. The charm of manuscript copying provided both solace and a sense of purpose, echoed in the artful revelations expressed through text. As they engaged in these activities, nature offered its own immersion, hushed evenings filled with hushed sounds of rustling leaves. Monks often turned their faces toward the cool air, allowing the tranquility of twilight to envelop them gently. Solitary reflection became intertwined with community devotion, as both aspects formed the bedrock of monastic life. However, despite the seemingly harmonious environment, moments of loneliness pervaded the cloistered existence. The vow of silence, while intended to deepen spiritual focus, occasionally magnified the sense of isolation. One might observe a monk seated alone in contemplative stillness, the weight of unspoken thoughts more poignant than the surroundings allowed. A space intended for reflection sometimes rendered companionship starkly absent. As darkness crept upon the monastery, a sense of imminent rest began to settle in. Monks would return to their cells for the night. The small, sparsely furnished quarters contained little, bare wooden beds, a modest altar, and the ubiquitous presence of sacred texts. Monks arranged their cells to suit their spiritual needs, creating sacred spaces within the confines of their rooms. Shadows danced on the walls as one's thoughts wandered towards the mysteries of faith and existence. When the weight of day finally succumbed to the quiet embrace of night, the day would conclude, leaving behind echoes of devotion and aspiration. The rhythm of a monk's life inevitably returned to its beginning, marked by the cycle of work, worship, and contemplation. The structures defined by discipline echoed throughout their existence, guiding each monk on a continuous journey toward spiritual growth. In examining the life of Bernard and the lives of countless monks, it becomes apparent that monasticism during the 14th century served a dual purpose. On one hand, it was a framework for communal ties and shared identity. On the other, it placed immense pressure on individual practitioners to attain spiritual goals amid a rigorous set of expectations. As we draw this reflection towards a close, we consider the implications of monasticism beyond individual striving. The interactions between monks and their broader communities fostered significant connections. This legacy permeated the very structure of church practices, emphasizing how collective aspirations shaped religious transformation. The cultivation of faith shifted dramatically throughout the 14th century, punctuated by both crises and reforms. Monks, while embodying their vows, became far more than isolated figures in pursuit of enlightenment. They evolved into complex agents navigating the intricacies of institutional frameworks, impacting the church and society at large. In contemplating these influences, we now prepare to shift our focus. The legacy of monastic figures like Bernard illuminates a richer understanding of monastic life during this era. The intersection of individual struggle and communal faith serves as a lens through which we can appreciate the broader historical significance left in the wake of those who sought to live piously amidst the challenges of the world. With this understanding as our backdrop, we now delve into the reflections surrounding the profound impact monastic figures had within church history during the 14th century. The narratives of those who lived during this transformative period echo through time, illuminating paths created by their trials and tribulations. The reflections on monastic influence invite an understanding of the doctrinal and social responsibilities undertaken by monks. The 14th century marked a notable period of relativity, where the impact of monastic figures had profound implications on the fabric of church history. As we further explore this landscape, we observe the gradual evolution of monastic practices. Monks navigated an intricate setting composed of shifting beliefs and strained theological dialogues. Their contributions were not confined to prayer and contemplation, rather, they extended into the societal realms, shaping the thoughts and actions of the lay community. The entwinement of monastic activities with everyday life provided a unique lens through which to understand this historical period. The practices of monastic life, marked by piety, labor, and scholarship, fostered an environment that sought both to educate and spiritualize a broader audience. Monasteries became centers of learning, repositories of knowledge, where monks diligently copied texts and engaged in theological discourse. The emphasis on literacy can be traced back to the early foundations of monastic communities, particularly during the rise of the Benedictine order in the 6th century. However, by the 14th century, more rigid structures had formed. Monks were increasingly recognized as preservers of both religious and classical knowledge. The preservation of texts was a meticulous process, highlighting the dedication required amidst monastic routines. The actions taken in scriptoria, the designated areas in which monks copied texts, were detailed and leisurely. Attention to the ink's viscosity, the parchment's quality, and the proper maintenance of quills required considerable patience and precision. The gentle scratching of quill against parchment created a rhythm that echoed within the cloisters, punctuating the silence with a unique serenity. Historical records indicate that certain monasteries, such as those within the Cistercian order established by Bernard of Clairvaux, grew notable for their pioneering contributions to agricultural practices. They implemented systematic methods that increased productivity, improving food sources for both the monastic community and surrounding areas. This cultivation of both land and spirit simultaneously reinforced communal ties while addressing everyday needs. Furthermore, the role of the monastery as a landholder within the economic landscape warrants reflection. Monks operated under varying degrees of authority, forming alliances with local nobility. This interconnection facilitated both material support and theological instruction, thereby enabling monks to extend their influence. For instance, as recorded in ecclesiastical annals, monasteries often acted as mediators in local disputes, employing their spiritual authority to broker peace. The reverberations of this influence could be observed in various layers of communal engagement. Monastic establishments provided refuge for the sick and poor, often housing those in desperate need. Acts of charity were not merely obligations but duties deeply rooted in the monastic ethos. The principle of hospitality, derived from scriptural foundations, dictated how monks interacted with the vulnerable members of society. Such services represented an extension of their spiritual commitment, promoting a compassionate view linked to their ascetic lifestyle. As we turn to consider the broader influence of 14th-century monasticism, we note how the Catholic Church experienced considerable alterations that would continue to resonate through subsequent centuries. Many monks found themselves confronted with theological questions regarding the wealth held by the Church as a whole, leading to tensions between ascetic values and institutional wealth. Disputes arose, prompting important dialogues that would reshape understandings of religious life. Documentation from this period also reveals examples of monks presenting critiques against their own institutions. The intention behind such critique sought to restore a sense of authenticity threatened by opulence. Many monks and religious leaders called for a return to a simpler, more authentic Christian practice, a call echoed throughout the writings of saints and theologians alike. The culmination of such activities can often be best understood through the examination of historical figures. Challenges faced by influential monks, like Bernard of Clairvaux or others, culminated in rich, complex narratives that provide deeper insights into monastic existence. Among them, historical hostility often prompted urgent discussions about the future of monasticism. This tension underscored the necessity for continuous adaptation within the monastic framework and fueled broader ecclesiastical reforms. This period of crisis ultimately set the stage for subsequent developments that would reverberate through time. The shared experiences of monks gave birth to dialogue essential to addressing contemporaneous challenges, forming the basis for shifts within the Church's structural and spiritual dimensions. As the complexities of monastic life unfold, attention must now turn toward the intricate nature of the manuscripts produced by monks during this time. Monastic scriptoria, often hidden gems within the cloisters, stored rich histories waiting to be explored. These artifacts provide a unique view into the practices and thoughts that shaped medieval spirituality. The records of manuscript illustrations, the various inks utilized, and the unique bindings employed offer tangible reminders of monks' labor and dedication. Each element within these manuscripts communicates not only the text itself but also the labor, dedication, and occasional despair of those who committed their lives to such creations. Many of these manuscripts were adorned with illuminations, bringing artistry into the rigid folds of daily life. We now transition to examine the mystery of inscribed manuscripts from this era, shedding light on those texts that have turned up in widely unexamined corners of monastic libraries. These remnants of history emerge from obscurity, uncovering unrecorded stories and previously undocumented beliefs. The process of rediscovery has led to tantalizing theories grounded in historical scholarship, which we shall now explore. Within the somber cloisters of the monasteries, an atmosphere of scholarly pursuit thrived. Knowledge was both sacred and laborious. In the flickering candlelight of these scriptoria, skilled hands meticulously inscribed manuscripts. The scent of parchment filled the air, mingling with the faintly acrid aroma of heated wax used to seal letters. These manuscripts, often created under dim, flickering light, represented decades of painstaking work. They contained religious texts, theological treatises, and various prayers critical to the monastic and ecclesiastical life of the 14th century. The manuscripts were typically bound in materials ranging from simple leather to more ornate covers adorned with intricate gold leaf. Each binding carried its own stories, weaving a narrative not just through text, but through its very construction. Each book served a purpose but also bore the fingerprints of the monk who laboriously crafted it. Monks often worked with limited resources, their tools consisting of wooden pens, handmade inks from organic materials, and simple cutting instruments. Between 1320 and 1350, many illuminated texts began to emerge, showcasing an intersection of faith and artistry. The illustrations crafted by the monks served more than aesthetic purposes. They were often instructional, guiding the viewer's understanding of the textual content. Colors were sourced from natural minerals, creating a palette that was rich yet sometimes limited due to the availability of resources. Blue hues often came from lapis lazuli, while reds were derived from crushed cochineal insects, resulting in vibrant depictions of religious narratives. However, many manuscripts remained undisturbed in hidden corners of libraries. Attention often turned toward those deemed great works, overshadowing numerous lesser-known texts. It is within these underappreciated volumes that scholars find valuable information. This overlooks the reality that some of the greatest insights can come from the mundane and ordinary aspects of monastic life. The unremarkable notes handwritten in margins can express personal struggles and hopes, illuminating human experiences deeply embedded within the context of devotion. A little more than 100 years later, some of these manuscripts, many nearly forgotten, would emerge from dusty vaults, whispering the secrets of their creators. The use of parchment, a common choice for manuscript production, reflects a transition in material culture from the more perishable papyrus. Parchment, made from animal skins, provided a durable alternative and was often reused, its original text scraped away to make room for new writings. This cycle of consumption and creation is one that encapsulates the very spirit of monastic dedication. Manuscripts served an essential role in education and the dissemination of knowledge, particularly during a time when literacy levels were low outside monastic walls. These texts provided the framework for theological studies and ecclesiastical governance. Many monasteries operated schools for novice monks, who were educated through the reading of closely monitored materials. The process of copying texts reinforced not only literacy but also the words of faith which shaped their lives. The communal effort involved in manuscript creation fostered bonds among the monks. While engrossed in their work, monks engaged in hushed dialogues about the teachings conveyed within the texts they wrote. The shared silence in the scriptorium was punctuated only by the soft scratching of quills on parchment and occasional murmurings of prayers. It created an environment saturated with a sense of purpose, muted yet profound. Archaeological evidence points towards the existence of specialized spaces within monasteries designated for manuscript production. Numerous excavations of monastic sites throughout Europe, including renowned locations like Cluny in France and Westminster Abbey in England, reveal physical layouts supporting this crucial occupation. Findings of desks padded with animal furs and remnants of various inks alongside exquisitely crafted tools provide tangible connections to the lives of these men. The often simple and austere conditions of their daily lives contrast with the beautiful manuscripts they produced. As these manuscripts began to emerge from long silent corners, they revealed their stories, often accompanied by the markings of time. The fading text of many volumes reflected generations of handling, attendance in prayer, and finally, abandonment. Some manuscripts bore the scars of hasty searches, the edges worn where monks had repetitively sought out particular pages for their reading or instruction. Such qualities lent a voice to the often voiceless struggle of the 14th century monk who devoted hours, days, and sometimes years to the writing process. The importance of categorizing and preserving these manuscripts came to the forefront during the 14th century and beyond. Scholars undertook the task of examining these collections, delving into their origins, contexts, and significance. They inscribed not only the texts but embedded within the pages the histories and struggles of their produce. Their work reminds us of the undying pursuit of knowledge and how the past emanated through these humble pages. However, this rediscovery raised questions about archival practices. The challenge to catalogue and date these forgotten manuscripts points toward the limitations of past scholarship. Documentation practices often fell short, leading to confusion and misidentified texts. Scholars grappled with the accuracy of previous attributions and categorization. Dating methods would evolve over the centuries, but many manuscripts initially came without a specific date or author, leading to an ambiguity surrounding their productions. Yet, in the silence of dissecting these texts, historians began to connect threads of monastic history long left unexplored. The manuscripts began to paint a vivid portrait not only of the religious sentiments of the time but also the political undercurrents shaping monastic life. Through these texts, they glimpsed the evolving nature of faith and influenced the broader religious landscape. The mystery of these manuscripts remains an ongoing investigation. Some scholarly debates focus on how geographic locations played a role in the production of manuscripts. Many theories suggest regional styles reflective of local cultures. Areas with greater access to artistic resources produced more elaborately illuminated works. Others indicated that localized movements of monks led to varying writing styles, illustrating the dynamic nature of monastic life itself. The study of inscriptions and margins provides insight into the daily lives of monks and their thoughts. Some margins hold the simple prayers of everyday life, while others contain notes and reminders regarding agricultural cycles or communal duties. These inscriptions often create a layered understanding of the mundane, showcasing the continuous interaction between the divine and the ordinary. As we consider the role of manuscripts in historical scholarship, it becomes clear that their significance extends far beyond their immediate text. They serve as a testament to the lives lived by those dedicated to their faith. It is within these pages that the essence of monastic existence echoes, creating a profound and lasting legacy. Continuing our exploration, we now shift our focus to the archaeological findings at monastic sites, revealing the tangible aspects of monastic lives intertwined with the mystical dedication illustrated in their manuscripts. These findings invite us to scrutinize the physical remnants of monasticism, presenting an opportunity to comprehensively understand the structures that housed these men of faith and their everyday undertakings. As we shift our focus to archaeological findings at monastic sites, we delve into the tangible aspects of monastic existence. Extensive excavation projects across Europe have revealed the physical structures that once housed the lives of monks dedicated to their faith. These archaeological investigations have uncovered essential insights into the daily routines and communal lives of members within the monastic community. A prominent example can be found at the ruins of the 12th century Cistercian monastery known as Clairvaux, located in present-day France. Excavations have unearthed the foundations of the monastery, which speak to the architectural preferences of the time. The layout reflected the principles outlined in the Rule of St. Benedict, emphasizing order and functionality. The church, cloisters, kitchens, and dormitories were all arranged to foster community life while prioritizing connection with the divine. As researchers sift through layers of earth, they have discovered various artifacts that offer a glimpse into everyday life within these walls. For instance, simple pottery shards have emerged, displaying both utilitarian and decorative features. The texture of these earthenware pieces varied, with some exhibiting coarse finishes while others were more refined. Such variations often provide insights into the economic conditions of the monastery and the skills of the monks involved in pottery production. Furthermore, the remnants of everyday items, including iron tools and agricultural implements, have revealed monastic practices related to sustenance. Some tools, specifically those used for cultivating fields, illustrate the skilled labor monks engaged in to support their communities. Excavations at monastic farms show evidence of crop rotation, which was essential for maintaining soil fertility. Grain storage facilities have also been identified, indicating the importance of sustenance for both monks and visiting pilgrims. Archaeological findings have also unearthed evidence of trade relationships held by the monasteries. Items such as coins and weights have been found, which confirm that monasteries acted as hubs of economic activity within their regions. Local artisans would provide goods in exchange for the shelter and spiritual counsel offered by monastic institutions. This established a necessary symbiosis, contributing to the monastery's ability to thrive despite the challenges of the 14th century. Additionally, the communal kitchens discovered at several monastic sites have become focal points for study. Evidence regarding the preparation of meals reveals what monks consumed during their austere diets. Archaeobotanical analyses, including the examination of plant remains, have shown that grains such as barley and oats were common staples. There are also signs of garden plots adjacent to the monastery walls, a practice rooted in self-sufficiency. Investigations into these kitchens indicate that cooking techniques utilized by the monks were modest at best. Cooking vessels, often quite simple in design, suggest that monks prioritized practicality over elaborate culinary endeavors, aligning with their ascetic lifestyle. The absence of expensive spices or gourmet ingredients points to the stark reality of their daily meals. Of particular note are the findings related to the personal belongings of monks. Researchers have catalogued a variety of smaller items, such as combs, writing utensils, and fragments of manuscripts. These findings help highlight the community's intellectual life, as well as the individual pursuits that monks engaged in, albeit limited by their vows of silence. The ritualistic aspect of monastic life is also reflected in the architectural choices made by builders of these sites. For example, the orientation of churches towards the east symbolized a desire for spiritual alignment. The presence of altars endowed with specific engravings or decorations provides further evidence of the spiritual focus within their community. The remains of copious amounts of candles and incense holders illustrate the ceremonial undertones of daily life, reaffirming the commitment to divine worship. In summary, the archaeological evidence collected from monastic sites allows for a comprehensive understanding of the physical environments in which monks lived and worked. These remnants and artifacts, layered within the earth over centuries, create a tangible connection to the past, and provide invaluable insights into the challenges and routines of monastic existence. The intricate relationship between monks and their surroundings serves to emphasize the essential elements of their daily lives. As we now transition to the exploration of rituals regarding wealth and asceticism in monastic orders, we consider how the practices of affluence contrasted strikingly with the ideals of poverty and simplicity traditionally upheld by monastic communities. Monastic wealth and asceticism create a complex dynamic within the fabric of religious life in the 14th century. The rituals surrounding wealth often serve to highlight the conflicting ideals of poverty that are central to monasticism. Monks, while committed to lives of simplicity, find themselves in a society that doesn't always mirror those values. The community receives donations from wealthy patrons and lands endowed by the nobility, creating a paradox between their spiritual goals and the material affluence that sometimes surrounds them. Feast days present an interesting illustration of this paradox. Celebrated occasions often involve elaborate meals. Records indicate that churches would host grand banquets, featuring significant quantities of food, which stood in stark contrast to the meager daily rations that monks usually consumed. Such feasts could include various meats, pastries, and fruits, which were rarely seen in a monk's simple diet of porridge and bread. The preparation of these meals would typically require the cooperation of multiple monks, each assigned a specific responsibility, from the selection of ingredients to the final presentation of the feast. For instance, on the Feast of St. Benedict, traditionally celebrated on July 11th, monks would partake in remarkable culinary displays that would not be repeated until the next important feast day. Documentation from these events reveals that skilled cooks were often prized within the monastery, as they could transform even the limited ingredients into satisfying dishes using techniques passed down from prior generations. However, these festivities would often induce internal conflict among monks who had taken vows of poverty, causing some to question the piousness of indulging in such abundant meals. In addition to feast days, the practice of almsgiving is essential to understanding the financial fabric of the monastery. Economic reliance on the generosity of the faithful often creates a narrative where wealth becomes both a means for sustaining monastic life and a source of tension. Monks would frequently receive gifts from admirers of their spirituality, including money, livestock, or agricultural produce. Records from the 14th century show that prominent nobles, wishing for divine favor or for the remembrance of their family names, would contribute lavishly to the monastery, thereby creating a cycle of wealth accumulation. However, this ritual of receiving offerings came with its own challenges. Such generosity could lead to expectations regarding the monks' behavior and their role within the community. Historians note that the wealth gleaned from these donations sometimes influenced the social hierarchy within the monastery itself. Monasteries established strict guidelines governing wealth accumulation, ensuring that all possessions were utilized for communal benefit. The rule of Saint Benedict, established in the early 6th century, emphasized the communal ownership of goods and called for meticulous records of all received contributions. The economic practices allowed for the sustenance of daily life while adhering to the principles of communal poverty that monks promised to uphold. There was also a distinct ritual involved in handling these gifts. Monks would often hold ceremonies to formally acknowledge the acquisitions. These events provided an opportunity for solidarity among the brethren, as all would gather to express gratitude for the donations received. Such acknowledgement signified a reminder of the spiritual purpose behind the financial support provided. Despite the apparent positive aspects of wealth, the monks would maintain a somber tone, stressing that the riches should not veer them from their spiritual mission. For the monks, the tension between wealth and asceticism often translated into daily practices. This duality becomes evident when examining how they dressed. Monastic attire was typically simple and functional, characterized by coarse woolen robes. However, upon special occasions, the monks might adorn themselves with vestments that displayed their ecclesiastical rank, highlighting their influence and status within the church. This practice, rooted in tradition, elicited debates regarding the appropriateness of displaying material wealth, prompting some monks to forego such luxuries altogether in favor of a deeper commitment to the ideals of asceticism. The historical documentation reveals instances where monks would resist the allure of wealth, opting instead for simplicity. Notably, figures like Saint Francis of Assisi, who lived in the early 13th century but had a profound influence on subsequent generations, dedicated his life to radical poverty. His ideas permeated the mental landscapes of monks even into the 14th century, encouraging a return to the ideals of simplicity and humility. Francis' followers, termed the Franciscans, often experienced conflict within the institution themselves, balancing their roles as influencers of piety while navigating the complexities of monastic wealth. In responding to the dichotomy of wealth and asceticism, monastic communities developed strategies for mitigating tensions. Some chose to redistribute surplus resources by providing for the less fortunate. Historians note that surplus food and materials were sometimes given to the neighboring peasantry, reinforcing the monks' commitment to their community and helping to alleviate any guilt that may have arisen from accumulating wealth. Artifacts from archaeological digs provide additional insight into how wealth was perceived and managed within monastic cultures. Unearthed during excavations of sites such as the Abbey of Clairvaux, these findings illustrate the balance of material needs against spiritual aspirations. Tools used for a variety of agricultural purposes indicate the monks' engagement with their surroundings. The remains of storage bins, pottery for cooking, and textiles confirm that sustenance was largely derived from land carefully tended by these religious men. These insights reinforce the understanding that their labor was seen as a means to live in accordance with their vows, while still managing the richness brought into their lives by outside influences. Further examination reveals how rituals surrounding wealth could compromise monastic ideals. For example, during the 14th century, complaints emerged regarding excessive expenditures made on behalf of the monastery. Some historians cite complaints sent to ecclesiastical authorities, indicating that certain monasteries suffered from disputes regarding financial misconduct. As the demand for wealth grew, it became increasingly difficult for monks to adhere to the principles established by the rule of Saint Benedict. The financial expectations could lessen the focus on spiritual endeavors, pulling them away from contemplation and prayer. All of these ritualistic practices regarding wealth coexist with the lifestyle choices made by the monks, ultimately creating a layered portrait of their existence. The solemnity of their ascetic vows was periodically softened by the flavors of the grand banquet celebrated within the monastery walls. Yet, in the shadows of these festivities remained an inescapable prompt for self-reflection and accountability. The idea of living a life dedicated to God while navigating the complexities of earthly riches mirrored the greater discussions occurring within the church during this period. Naples, one of the prominent cities of the time, showcases how these contrasts played out within society. Monks residing there faced scrutiny over their possessions, often debating amongst themselves the true meaning of poverty. The rich offerings they received presented both opportunities and challenges in maintaining a genuine life of worship. As we transition from the fascinating examination of monastic wealth and asceticism to delve deeper into the often overlooked roles of women in monastic communities, we begin to understand how, even amid such dynamics, the lives of nuns also reflect the complex relationship between devotion and societal expectations during this pivotal century. The complexity of women's roles within monastic communities during the 14th century unveils many subtleties. While the histories typically spotlight male monastic figures, the contributions of women merit recognition. The framework of monastic life afforded women unique spaces where they could participate in religious devotion, often as an abbess or as members of a nunnery, known as cloisters. These convents were designed with spiritual rigor in mind, often reflecting the architectural designs of their male counterparts. For instance, one notable community was founded in 1212 in the village of Lourdes, situated in what is now France. The nuns there adhered to the Cistercian rule, similar to their male counterparts, emphasizing simplicity and a departure from worldly excess. Records indicate that life in a convent was governed by a structured daily schedule. The nuns would rise before dawn, often around 4 a.m., just as monks began their day. They too were called to participate in the liturgy of the hours, marking their days with a rhythm of prayer and reflection. These moments fostered a sense of community and purpose, although they were marked by strict adherence to silence and ceremony. Within the confines of the convent, the nuns engaged in various activities. Some spent their days in devotion and prayer, while others took on the labor-intensive responsibilities of maintaining the monastic household. This included tending to the gardens, where they cultivated herbs necessary for medicinal remedies. The scent of lavender and thyme filled the air as they worked, but the labor could be strenuous. It involved long hours in sometimes harsh weather, especially in the colder months when frost blanketed the ground. Each community had its own unique attributes regarding the roles of women. For example, in the Abbey of Santa Clara, established in the 13th century, nuns were noted for their baking and culinary skills, creating bread for the local community in times of hardship. This contributed to their reputation as caregivers within the locality while integrating them into the social fabric surrounding their monastery. However, it is worth noting that women's monastic lives were also governed by numerous restrictions. Despite their influential roles, they lacked access to certain educational opportunities available to men. Scholarly studies during this period largely excluded women, and women's contributions to theological discourse were minimal. Manuscript records often contained nil references to female authorship, presenting significant barriers to female enlightenment and spiritual expression. Historical documents indicate that abbesses occasionally held power equivalent to that of their male clerical counterparts. In some regions, abbesses managed properties and oversaw the economic management of their convents. An example highlighted in ecclesiastical archives showcases Abbess Hildegard of Bingen, who, active in the 12th century, would influence theological discussions through her writings, intertwining matters of faith with matters of health and natural philosophy. Such figures were rare but exist testament to women's potential influence within religious structures. Furthermore, the interaction between abbesses and cooperating bishops illustrated the delicate balance of power. Recognizing their inherent authority, bishops occasionally relied on abbesses to mediate local conflicts or to represent the church in matters of community importance. This dynamic presented women with opportunities for greater authority, even as they were bound by the same vows of poverty and chastity as their male counterparts. Silence, fundamental to monastic discipline, often took on an even deeper weight for women. The vow of silence could act as both a source of spiritual clarity and a challenge to personal identity. Women in monastic life participated in ascetic practices which often led to a stricter interpretation of silence. Unlike monks, whose private thoughts might find some expression through shared conversations, women had very few outlets to voice their spiritual dilemmas. This atmosphere of silence, while initially meant to foster devotion, sometimes morphed into a means of constraining their thoughts and ambitions. Examining the broader cultural attitudes toward women during the 14th century contextualizes their experiences within monasteries. Social norms severely limited women's freedoms outside convent walls. Most women were expected to marry and fulfill domestic roles within patriarchal structures. Monastic life gave women an avenue to escape these societal expectations, even if it came with its own restrictive set of rules. The presence of female mystics during this period further expanded the landscape of spiritual devotion. Figures like Mechthild of Magdeburg and Julian of Norwich emerged as remarkable voices, often writing mystical works that spoke directly to their experiences of faith. These writings, crafted within monastic walls, evoke the deep meditative traditions established by both monastic men and women. Many of their texts, containing rich imagery and passionate religious fervor, tantalizingly describe their experiences of God, offering glimpses into the spiritual fervor that resided within enclosed spaces. While societal norms confined many women to limited roles, monastic life provided transformative opportunities. Women redirected their aspirations to theological pursuits within the community of faith. Through quiet endurance, nuns and abbesses navigated the sometimes stormy seas of monastic existence. Their stories remind us that beneath the cloistered silence lay steadfast resilience and purpose. As we shift our focus from women's roles in monastic communities, the mobility of pilgrims toward monasteries introduced another layer of complexity within the religious landscape of the 14th century. These journeys often held significant spiritual and economic implications for both the pilgrims and the monastic communities they visited. Traveling long distances, pilgrims traversed treacherous terrains, often seeking solace or healing across the sanctity of monastery walls. It is within this context that we further explore the interaction surrounding pilgrimage, shedding light on the impact of these spiritual journeys and the vibrant exchanges that emerged from them. As pilgrims ventured toward monasteries throughout the 14th century, they did so with diverse motivations. Many sought spiritual enrichment, healing, or indulgences through acts of penance. The physical journeys undertaken were often fraught with peril. Pilgrimage paths wound through rugged landscapes, encompassing dense forests, steep hills, and rivers that could be treacherous to traverse. Historians note that medieval travel was not only arduous but also dangerous, due to highwaymen and unpredictable weather. Archival records from this time detail the hardships faced on these journeys, prominently highlighting the reliance on charity offered by religious institutions. Upon arrival at a monastery, pilgrims were met with a distinctive atmosphere, rich with the scent of incense and the muted sound of distant chants echoing through stone corridors. The architecture itself echoed a sacred purpose. Tall, vaulted ceilings created an ambience of solemnity and reverence. Monks and nuns, often cloaked in simple habits, provided hospitality to those seeking solace, a practice seen as a form of service to God. Manuscript evidence shows that records were meticulously maintained regarding the number of pilgrims received, emphasizing the importance of these communities as both spiritual and social hubs. The interactions between pilgrims and monks were varied and multifaceted. Some pilgrims offered donations, often items such as bread, cloth, or coins. These contributions served not only as acts of gratitude but also assisted monasteries in funding their daily operations and supporting the monastic community. The economic implications were significant. Documents indicate that large pilgrimage sites became well known, fostering local commerce. Fishmongers, bakers, and smiths often set up nearby to cater to the influx of visitors, thus integrating monastic communities into the wider economic landscape. Sharing meals with pilgrims became a routine affair. Often, the monastery kitchens prepared simple, nourishing fare for the guests. Common dishes might include pottage, bread, and perhaps a modest serving of dried fish or vegetables, depending on the season. This hospitality echoed the biblical directive of welcoming strangers, further highlighting the capacity for monastic communities to function as safe havens and centers of charity. Pilgrims frequently arrived at monasteries with physical ailments or illnesses. Each community had specific saints to whom they prayed for healing, and many monasteries possessed relics believed to hold miraculous properties. These relics drew pilgrims from various locales, contributing to an overwhelming sense of hope and faith. The archives of various monasteries contain records of remarkable healing events. These accounts emphasize the deep spiritual convictions held by both the monks and the visiting faithful. As pilgrims navigated the monastery grounds, they participated in the spiritual life of the community. This included joining in prayers, attending masses, and often contributing to the singing of hymns. The communal worship not only fostered a shared sense of devotion but also created bonds among those present. Opportunities for reflection allowed individuals to contemplate their spiritual journeys in a setting that encouraged meditation and prayer. For many, these experiences were transformative, often igniting a deeper commitment to their faith. Yet, beyond the spiritual enrichment, the realities of pilgrimage exposed deeper economic and social dynamics within the 14th century landscape. The increasing traffic of pilgrims through monastic borders illustrated the shift in religious practices at that time. It highlighted the role of monasteries as not merely isolated cloisters of asceticism but active participants in the socio-economic framework of the age. As we reflect on the importance of these interactions between pilgrims and monastic life, it is crucial to consider the theological implications. The narratives of healing, communal worship, and shared meals contributed to a broader culture of penance and piety. The pilgrimages reinforce notions of community, charity, and collective faith, serving both individual and group needs. Monasteries became sites of convergence for various social classes, illustrating how religion bridged significant societal divides through shared spiritual experiences. Throughout this dynamic exchange, materials such as guidebooks and pamphlets emerged, offering insights and instructions for pilgrims regarding their journeys. These documents provided information about significant sites, miraculous tales associated with particular saints, and practical advice on navigating the often challenging paths. Archaeological examinations of pilgrimage artifacts, including badges and other tokens, illustrate the tangible connections between individual experiences and the broader religio-cultural landscape. In summary, the pilgrimage experience during the 14th century was multifaceted, intertwining the spiritual aspirations of pilgrims with economic realities faced by monastic communities. Both monks and visitors forged connections through shared faith, hospitality, and service, indicating a rich tapestry of mutual benefit. As we transition from the influence of pilgrimage on monastic life, we turn our attention to the contrasting daily experiences of nobility. This shift reflects the distinct social stratifications present in the 14th century. Wealthy families lived under markedly different conditions, underscoring the stark disparities that defined medieval society. The contrasting lifestyles of nobility and monks provide further context to the societal dynamics at play. Exploring a day in the life of a noble family reveals the layers of complexity and privilege that existed parallel to the austere realities faced by monks. As the first light of dawn began to filter through leaded glass windows, a noble family in the 14th century would typically awaken between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. These hours marked the beginning of a day filled with responsibilities, social interactions, and the maintenance of prominence. The air was often filled with the sounds of servants bustling about, preparing the house for the day. Voices murmured as they exchanged tasks. These sounds contrasted starkly with the silence of the monastery, highlighting the vibrant atmosphere of noble households. In noble homes, the warmth of well-furnished chambers was palpable, unlike the cool, sparse cells of the monks. Nobles enjoyed cushioned beds adorned with fine linens, heavily embroidered tapestries lining the walls, and wooden furniture polished to a shine. The smell of beeswax candles mixed with scents of herbal soaps used for bathing immersed their surroundings in comfort and opulence. As the morning progressed, the family would gather for breakfast, often held in the great hall or a smaller, private chamber, depending on the day's activities. Breakfast usually consisted of items such as freshly baked bread, rich cheeses, and perhaps a selection of cured meats. Fruits were also present when in season, providing a delightful contrast to the bread's density. Historical accounts indicate that the nobles would consume at least 1 pound of bread, 3 to 4 ounces of cheese, and a small portion of meat for this meal. The dishes were often spiced with herbs, reflecting the wealth to afford such variety. The behavior of nobles during breakfast was social, filled with conversation and laughter, all while servants refilled goblets of wine or ale. This convivial atmosphere stood in stark contrast to the monks' early morning porridge, simple and bland in flavor. The nobles' breakfast served as an opportunity to solidify bonds with family members and guests, who were often invited to partake in this meal, reinforcing alliances and fostering relationships. Following breakfast, societal duties awaited. The noble family would have responsibilities relating to their lands and tenants. Meetings with stewards concerning harvests, taxes, and local disputes were common practice among the upper classes. Noble women often engaged in managing household affairs, ensuring that supplies were procured and food stored properly for the seasons ahead. Their knowledge extended to herbal remedies and family tradition, asserting their authority within the home. Boys served by studying under a tutor, learning crucial skills like reading, writing, and knightly values. Girls were often focused on domestic skills, learning embroidery, weaving, and the management of household inventories from a young age. These educational pursuits differed greatly from the monastic commitment to theological study, illustrating the varied pathways within societal structures. The emphasis on preparation for roles within the realm only intensified the disparities faced by monks, who were dedicated to spiritual matters. Amid these activities, the nobility often showcased their wealth through elaborate attire and accessories. The fabric used ranged from fine silks to robust woolens, adorned with embroidery and patterns unique to the wearer's lineage. Nobles, particularly those of higher rank, wore outer garments lined with fur, offering both warmth and prestige. Such distinctions would allow them to be recognized from afar, reinforcing their status through the colors and types of clothing they wore. Once their responsibilities were addressed, nobles proceeded to inspect lands or engage in activities like hunting. Hunting was particularly popular among the elite, seen as a leisure pursuit that also served societal functions. The chase required organization, and nobles would gather with hunters to pursue game, employing trained hounds that barked excitedly at the prospect of the hunt. The act of hunting not only provided sustenance but also functioned as a display of power and skill, reinforcing the nobles' dominion over their estates. At the same time, construction efforts, whether it be maintaining the estate or building new additions, were crucial aspects of noble life. Records indicate that many nobles sought to invest in their domain, improving their living situations while showcasing their wealth. This confluence of agriculture, hunting, and construction contrasted sharply with the confined and restricted life of monks, who seldom ventured beyond the cloister for leisure. After the day's endeavors, lunch would be served. The meal often involved stews, pies, or roasted meats. Bread remained a staple, served alongside hearty soups flavored with vegetables, while ale continued to flow. This meal extended for several hours, enabling further discussion on matters of importance, politics, alliances, and family concerns. These gatherings illustrated a clear continuum of noble custom, welcoming guests, forging friendships, and maintaining a network of influence. While the nobles enjoyed leisure and communal interaction, the monks remained enveloped in their rhythm of solitude and silent prayer. Monasteries seldom saw the kind of bustling activity that defined noble life. Monks were bound by discipline, their days orchestrated through the structured, repetitive cycles of prayer and work. This difference exemplified the vast gulf in experiences between those living in cloisters and those engaged in the vibrant, dynamic life of the upper class. As the late afternoon approached, noble families often indulged in cultural pursuits. The arts held significant importance among the wealthy. Record keepers have noted the influences of troubadours, who performed songs and tales of romance, valor, and devotion to help educate and entertain. Nobles engaged with these performances, facilitating a cultural environment that encouraged creativity and artistic expression among the elite. This appreciation for culture and refinement further enhanced their standing within society. When evening approached, the shift in atmosphere between palatial homes and the austere confines of monasteries would become even more pronounced. Noble homes would be adorned with flickering candlelight, illuminating intricate furnishings and embroidered tapestries as the family gathered for supper. Seasonal and local ingredients inspired the meals, often extending into elaborate feasts when occasions called for celebration. These famed banquets were a hallmark of noble culture, demonstrating both hospitality and wealth. Throughout these events, records provide evidence of numerous feasts undertaken in celebration of significant occasions, such as marriages, victories, or seasonal festivals. At such gatherings, nobles displayed their possibility through provisions, talented entertainers, and lavish settings. This celebration of abundance served to reinforce social hierarchies and cement relationships among influential families. The ritualistic nature of meals within noble households contrasted significantly with the sparse, simple meals shared among monks. Monastic tables yielded limited options, leading to dull sustenance and a focus on discipline rather than indulgence. The repetitive rhythms in a monastery fostered an environment suited for contemplation and introspection, ideals reflective of their spiritual objectives. As night encroached, families would retire to their chambers, ending another elaborate day. The transition to evening heralded a significant shift in the atmosphere, moving from communal activity to more personal moments of reflection and respite. The noble family, cloaked in their fineries, would finally settle in silence. With chambers warmed by the flicker of candlelight, they would take stock of the daily occurrences, pondering interactions and future endeavors. Thus concludes the day of a noble family, filled with social engagements, responsibilities, and embellishments. The parallels and tensions between their lives and the monastic communities serve as illustrations of medieval society's complexities. The acute differences in lifestyle reveal the broader social fabric of the 14th century. As we turn our attention to the political structures surrounding these noble estates, it becomes essential to consider the dynamics of power and alliances. The intertwining of nobility with religious institutions crafted the society's very foundation. The church often served as both an ally and adversary, a crucial player in the noble dealings of the time. The political structures of the 14th century were intricate and multifaceted. Nobility formed alliances with monastic establishments for various reasons. These connections were often driven by both material and spiritual interests. The church needed the support of the nobility to maintain its extensive influence, while noble families depended on the endorsement of religious figures to bolster their social status. This symbiotic relationship was documented in numerous records and correspondences of the era. When significant political events occurred, such as the signing of treaties or declarations of war, the church often played a crucial role in legitimizing these actions. Monastic leaders were called upon to provide prayers and blessings. This reinforced the perception of divine approval for the nobility's ambitions. Such prevailing dynamics strengthened the institutional bonds that existed between noble households and monastic communities. Archaeological findings from ecclesiastical sites have uncovered correspondence between political leaders and monastic authorities. These findings illustrate the importance of these alliances. During this time, prominent abbeys, such as the Abbey of Cluny, played pivotal roles in guiding political discourse. Established in the early 10th century, Cluny became a symbol of monastic reform and strength. Historical records detail specific instances where abbots wielded significant influence. For example, the abbey was often consulted when rulers sought to justify their reigns or settle disputes. Leaders were keenly aware that a favorable relationship with the church could elevate their standing in the eyes of the public. The ecclesiastical endorsement served various functions, providing stability and frequently guiding the course of local politics. In 1415, the Council of Constance exemplified the complexities of these relationships. Although it occurred at the start of the 15th century, its repercussions stemmed from policies formed in the previous century. The council aimed to resolve ongoing issues related to church governance, but it also demonstrated the shifting power dynamics among nobility and monks during the preceding years. Nobles influenced church doctrine through political maneuvering, and clergy became embroiled in secular conflicts. The rule of the Catholic Church in 14th-century Europe was formidable. Solid institutional frameworks provided a means for noble families to enhance their political clout. This interdependence created an environment in which monks, often bound by their vows, also became active participants in the political machinations of the time. Religious figures frequently found themselves in the unique position of needing to uphold their spiritual mandates while navigating the pressures exerted by noble interests. Records from various monasteries indicate that abbots could gain considerable power through financial contributions from noble households. Donations were common and often came in the form of land, which solidified a noble's legacy while simultaneously strengthening the monastery's resources. These contributions often led to the establishment of notable endowments, which were used to maintain monastic activities and fund communal projects. This reliance occasionally led to underlying tensions. The interests of the nobility could conflict with monastic goals, particularly as monasteries sought to adhere to their spiritual focus. For instance, the growing emphasis on wealth and territorial control among certain monastic orders became a point of contention. Clerical abuses and allegations of corruption were frequent topics of discussion in both ecclesiastical councils and among the laity. Documents from the time reflect complaints regarding the opulence found within some monastic communities. Criticism often stemmed from observers who believed that monks should prioritize asceticism. Notables such as John Wycliffe, a theologian and reformer, began voicing concerns regarding the accumulation of wealth by the church. This highlighted the growing dissent facing both the institution of the church and certain monastic orders. While the political dynamics were often focused on power exchanges and spiritual legitimacy, the economic implications were equally significant. Land ownership, for example, provided a means of control over resources. Nobles who aligned themselves with the church often received preferential access to spiritual benefits, including reduced penance or enhanced afterlife assurances. The tithe was a primary mechanism through which artisans and farmers were compelled to support both their lord and the church. This further intertwined their lives. Examining the lives of the serfs working under noble domains demonstrates the difficulty of daily existence during this time. They were often caught in a web of obligations to both their earthly and spiritual authorities. The records indicate that the tithe system enforced a heavy burden on the peasantry. Serfs were required to pay approximately 1/10 of their yield to their local church, which hindered their ability to accumulate sufficient provisions for survival. These practices starkly contrasted the lives of noble families, whose estates were characterized by a lifestyle marked by leisure, celebration, and intricate social interactions. Nobility often enjoyed varying luxuries while their peers toiled in laborious conditions. This disparity also reinforced the power structures of medieval society, as the ecclesiastical authorities who benefited from the hard work of the peasants yielded little consolation for their hardships. Feudal obligations dictated that serfs working lands owned by monasteries were subject to additional demands. Written records show their output would contribute to maintaining monastic grounds or providing sustenance for the monks. In contrast, those working other estates may have enjoyed slightly better conditions, although scarcely more favorable. Economic relationships between nobility and monastic establishments frequently highlighted profound inequities impacting the common people. The connections formed between monks and nobility ultimately shaped local economies and social landscapes. Farmers depended on the monasteries for spiritual guidance, while the nobility utilized their relationship with the church as a way to consolidate power. All these factors contributed to an ever-spiraling complexity of life in the 14th century. In further documenting these relationships, we find that monastic contributions included more than mere sustenance. Many monasteries offered educational services, libraries filled with religious and secular texts, and guided spiritual practices, which cultivated social networks that extended beyond their cloistered walls. This educational aspect proved crucial for fostering literacy and maintaining scholarly pursuits. Manuscripts produced within monasteries often became treasured possessions among the educational elite. Texts such as the Rule of Saint Benedict, written in the 6th century, played an influential role in shaping monastic life and governing relationships between monks and the broader society. The echoes of Benedict's directives resonated throughout time, impacting the nuances of power dynamics in this era. Throughout history, the role of the church vis-à-vis the nobility became increasingly vital. Political alignments formed based on shared interests regarding taxation, infrastructure, and land management. The church offered structure and stability during tumultuous periods, while noble families sought to retain their power in a feudal system leaning towards instability. This duality offered a glimpse into the complexities faced by both monks and nobles during the 14th century. As the century unfolded, events would continue to shape these relationships, leading to uprisings and challenges to authority from both clergy and laity alike. Tensions between nobles and the church would become evident as reformist movements began to take shape. In this delicate balance of authority, the intricacies of daily life shimmered beneath the surface, with persistence and intuition guiding the paths of individuals within the expansive tapestry of society. The needs of the everyday person, their labor, and their underscoring plight offered a contrasting backdrop against the lives of those dwelling in the lofty heights of power. Thus we prepare to shift our focus towards the economic disparities that defined the relationships of this era. In examining the economic reality facing the monks and their contributions to society, we will uncover how these factors perpetuated conditions of inequality in this defining century. As the sun began to cast its tentative rays over the landscape, a stark contrast emerged between the daily routines of influenced nobility and the stark existence of the monks. For the monks, who often rose before dawn, food scarcity drastically shaped their lives. The first meal of the day for the monks usually consisted of a thin porridge, commonly made from barley mixed with water. Records indicate this simplistic meal provided little in the way of nourishment. Its texture was often gritty, and its taste bland and unappealing. Monasteries, such as those belonging to the Benedictine order, adhered strictly to dietary guidelines, focusing on simplicity and moderation. The monastic regulations emphasized the importance of abstaining from indulgence. Therefore, flavor was often sacrificed in favor of adherence to these principles. To compound this stark existence, the life of a monk was inextricably woven into the fabric of labor. Each monk was assigned tasks that maintained the monastic community. Basic chores consisted of tending to vegetable gardens, planting, weeding, and harvesting various crops that supplemented their meager diets. The physical toll of this labor was considerable. Historical accounts reveal that monks engaged in back-breaking tasks under varying weather conditions, usually without any form of compensation. The silence during morning labor was palpable. The only sounds reverberating through the gardens were the gentle rustle of leaves and the rhythmic movements of each monk laboring in contemplative solitude. This silence served a dual purpose, both to foster an atmosphere for introspection and to enable a deepening of one's commitment to spirituality. Here, reflection became part of the labor, harmonizing with their austere lives. In contrast, the nearby nobility indulged in lavish breakfasts replete with roasted meats, rich breads, and sweet wines. Noble homes would echo with laughter and conversation as families gathered around tables stocked with a variety of foods. Kitchen staff hurried about, ensuring that all manners of luxury were available, tailored to elite palates. Such abundance for the nobility stood in stark juxtaposition to the simplicity enforced upon monks. Furthermore, the distribution of crops was closely linked to economic structures of the time. Monastic lands often profited from the surplus produced by monks. Many monasteries possessed large tracts of farmland, cultivated by lay workers or even serfs. These agricultural workers were bound to provide labor in exchange for protection and sustenance. In stark contrast, the rewards of their labor often faded into the hands of nobility, with small portions filtered back to the monks as meager provisions. Meanwhile, the closest interaction between nobility and monks came through a network of tithes and donations. Monasteries acted as religious centers where social gatherings often took place, as nobles sought spiritual favor from the church. This affiliation often placed economic burdens on the monks as they were responsible for maintaining the local church and its provisions. There existed a significant disparity in how the lands were tended by monks and how those same lands were treated by the nobility. Records from this time document severe restrictions placed upon serfs and labourers. Monastic estates sometimes treated their workers better compared to nearby noble estates. However, even conditions in the monasteries were often harsh, with many labourers experiencing limited freedoms. The laborious expectations placed upon monks perpetuated these realities. The burdens of maintaining culinary and agricultural standards, along with their continuous obligations, weighed heavily upon their shoulders. Without adequate resources, the monks struggled to meet their own needs. Historical documents reveal accounts of monks having to ration their portions during difficult harvest years. The occurrence of famine during this time was common. The Great Famine of 1315 to 1317, for instance, had dire implications on agricultural output throughout Europe. Monasteries were hit hard. Could the monks balance their vows of poverty with the need to sustain their very lives? Certain monks, in their desperation, risked breaking vows of poverty. They sometimes sought alternative means to acquire sustenance, acquiring things such as debts or bartering. This broke the simplicity in the foundation of monastic life, revealing a stark reality for many in that time. The paradox of wealth from land exploitation imposed burdens that brought spiritual and physical suffering. As the day progressed, monks struggled with the duality of their existence. Their spiritual aspirations demanded self-denial and appeasement of their frugal lifestyles. However, even as labourers and producers, they had to confront the realities of economic dependency that dictated their very lives. The shadows of systemic inequality loomed larger. Throughout this period, the association of wealth with moral standing created tension within monastic communities. This was particularly evident in the growing criticisms aimed at certain clergy who embraced affluence. Documentation records instances of reform driven by those questioning whether wealth had corrupted the spirits of religious leaders. The simple teachings of Christ clashed with the ostentatious displays portrayed by some monks, revealing the internal conflicts threatening the monastic framework. While engaging in daily chores, the senses of monks were often overwhelmed by the stark realities surrounding them. The scratched palms of labourers often contrasted sharply against the bright robes of clergy who urged against excessive affluence. This is where discomfort met devotion, a veneration of divine purpose overshadowed by the strenuous labour that characterized their existence. In the fields, each monk forged a connection between toil and faith. Each beginning and ending of day felt like the repetition of obligations woven into their understanding of spirituality. As every grain of barley represented sweat, agricultural productivity echoed their commitment to divine life. Each breakfast, though humbling, served as a reminder of the sacred connection they held toward their labor and existence. As day turned into night, reflections also fell upon broader social implications. The inequality between monks and the authorities drastically shaped community life. Relationships intertwined, while social structures enforced compliance and piety. For every offering or act of charity received, there was an equal reminding of the sacrifices endured in a life committed to asceticism. These daily occurrences mold the monks' realities within the abbeys. The contrast of life experienced by the monks and the privileges enjoyed by the nobility continuously manifested in distressing tensions hovering in the atmosphere. Economic disparities led to feedback loops of cultural traditions not solely existing within affluent circles. An aura of charity wrapped around the nobles' intentions masked the struggles of the lower class. Those who toiled under oppressive regimes faced their battles often without the support of collective awareness. Eventually, this state contributed to increasing calls for reforms. The burgeoning awareness regarding exploitation and inequality implored deeper moral reckoning, fueling movements directed toward change. Monasteries became centers for theological debate, as monks wrestled with complex realities. The seeds of change were slowly planted, awaiting the right conditions to germinate. So we transition from this exploration of the monks' economic tribulations to reflect upon the artistic expressions and cultural contributions birthed from these challenging periods. How did struggles influence creation? What legacy emerged as communities sought solace and inspiration amid hardships? Such reflections will shed light on the interconnection between adversity and creativity, forging a deeper understanding of the 14th century monastic experience. Artistic expressions flourished within the walls of the monasteries, growing out of the somber soil of hardship. Scholars and monks engaged in the meticulous act of manuscript creation, inheriting the traditions of their forebears while yearning to document their understandings and beliefs. The quiet dimness of scriptoriums provided an environment conducive to focused study and reflection. Here, in these rooms, illuminated pages glimmered with artistry, frail brushstrokes carrying prayers and teachings. Beginning in the late 12th century, art within monastic communities displayed the inherent melding of spiritual aspirations with the rich cultural influences that permeated European society. By the 14th century, monastic labor encompassed the making of elaborate texts, which included the Gospels, Psalters, and collections of saints' lives adorned with vibrant colors and intricate designs. This dedication to the written word served not only to educate monks but also provided an invaluable resource for laypeople who relied on these texts for spiritual enlightenment. One of the most esteemed centers of manuscript production was the Abbey of St. Gall, located in modern-day Switzerland. It served as a significant hub for the creation of illuminated manuscripts, renowned for both their physical beauty and theological depth. At St. Gall, manuscripts were produced under strict protocols. Evidence gathered from archaeological digs indicates that monks adhered to particular standards of spacing, style, and color use as they copied texts. The cold of the stone building contrasted sharply against the warmth of candlelight illuminating the parchment. Monks utilized materials such as gold leaf and lapis lazuli to evoke the divine. Records show the act of illumination infused each paragraph with reverence. Vivid hues leapt from the page, drawing the eye and inspiring contemplation. The busy hum of uninhibited thought paralleled the quiet scratching of quills on parchment. Sensory experience is heightened as the scent of ink intermingled with the musty air, creating an aura of academia steeped in spirituality. However, the very devotion to these artistic missions revealed deeper tensions. While some monks dedicated themselves to creating beauty through their work, others rested under the oppressive burden of expectation. Scribes tailored their art for various patrons, often responding to ecclesiastical leaders who sought to command attention through ostentation. With commissions from the elites came the challenge of balancing personal fervor with the whims of wealthy patrons. Manuscripts crafted for noble families sought wealth in their display, contrasting starkly with the ascetic ideals espoused by monastic life. The disparity ran more profound as monks grappled with internal life decisions, living in stark contrast to the indulgences presented by the wealthy. From artistic endeavors flowed a current illustrating the gravity of their struggles. Manuscripts became a space where the lines between sacred and secular blurred. Each brush stroke told a story of devotion, yet echoed a longing for liberation from external constraints. An interesting example arises from the work done by the monks of the Cistercian order. Founded in 1098 in Citeaux, France, they emphasized simplicity in both their lifestyles and religious practices. As the 14th century unfolded, Cistercian manuscripts reflected a movement toward more austere visual language. The illustrator's hand, instead of being lavish, conveyed quiet elegance through modest forms. A stark contrast to the ornate works of their Benedictine counterparts, these changes encapsulated the ongoing desire for humility within monastic settings. The very act of creating manuscripts transitioned beyond mere duty, it evolved into a spiritual exercise. In the rhythmic motions of ink flooding over parchment and the thoughtful arrangement of text upon the page, monks engaged in a dialogue with the divine. Each work needed care and intentionality, echoing the routines that defined their daily existence. Manuscript creation and reflection thus converged into vital practices through which monks sought to understand their role in a rapidly changing world. Historians point to the production of the beautiful Book of Kells, a masterpiece of insular art created around the 9th century, as a defining moment that influenced later centuries. Although it predated the 14th century, its enduring legacy was one of inspiration to those in monastic settings who engaged seriously with the traditions of illumination. Scholars analyze this artifact to explore its impact on medieval spiritual life, emphasizing the depth of connection among laborious producing works of beauty and their theological significance. Another crucial aspect of monastic cultural contributions during the 14th century lay embedded in their written works. As congregations gathered for communal worship, monks frequently utilized texts composed by fellow brothers within their communities. The inclusion of rich theological discourse spurred vigorous analysis among monastic circles. With such engagement, monks collectively sought to navigate emerging conflicts instigated by socio-political structures. Amidst artistic expressions arose a rich tradition of music. Monastic choirs harmonized voices within stone walls, providing a soundtrack to daily rhythms. Gregorian chant, with its sweeping lines and complex melodies, dominated liturgical practices. Monks, such as those at the Abbey of Cluny, became prominent figures in the liturgical reform movement. In a serene atmosphere, chants echoed back off the cold, stone alcoves, lifting the hearts and spirits of those who participated. Much like manuscript illumination, music served multiple functions within monastic life. It fostered unity among the brethren while offering a heavenly quality to worship. Yet, as music gained prominence as an artistic form, it also entailed new pressures. The shift toward polyphony, a style incorporating simultaneous melodic lines, began to enter into practice. Such developments posed questions among monastic leaders about maintaining the purity of worship versus embracing new stylistic innovations. As monks traversed the spectrum of artistic endeavors and musical pursuits, they faced a profound realization: their struggles fed creativity. Hardship nurtured resilience, fostering a vital interchange between creativity and life experiences. Each stroke of the quill came steeped not only in careful artistry but also a response to oppression, a hesitant grappling with dissatisfaction, and a longing for divine connection. The ascetic practices inherent in the lives of the monks created not only piety but also fertile ground for innovation. The legacy of those within the walls of monastic life during the 14th century intertwined the threads of labor, faith, and artistry. As their experiences ebbed and flowed, creativity ever remained tethered to the reality of their circumstances. Transitioning now from the exploration of artistic contributions, we turn our attention to the broader impact of monasticism during this tumultuous century. How did these intertwined lives foster a legacy influencing future generations? What cognitive reflections emerged as cultures shaped and reformed around these centers of faith? Consider the echoes of past struggles rising up, impacting perspectives on community, spirituality, and humanity as we delve deeper into the legacy left by these devoted ascetics. As we reflect upon the intricate relationships and challenges faced by monks during the 14th century, it becomes exceedingly clear that their existence served as a microcosm of broader societal structures. The daily lives of these men, while anchored in the spiritual realm, echoed the tribulations and victories of their respective communities. Their hardships, undoubtedly burdensome, did not occur in isolation, they existed within a tapestry of shared human experiences. In examining the legacy of monasticism, one must consider the unwavering dedication these ascetics demonstrated. Their vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience were not merely individual commitments, but profound invitations to enter into ongoing dialogues with the divine. This profound engagement with spirituality underpinned their daily tasks, yet the constant struggle against the temptations of the material world complicated their spiritual endeavors. Monastic life fostered a distinctive social environment. Unity among the brethren was upheld through rituals that demanded devotion and participation. Each member contributed uniquely, weaving together their strengths for the greater purpose of the community. The communal nature of life was punctuated by moments of diversion, exploration of artistic pursuits, and the promotion of learning and scholarship. Monasteries often became centers of education and preservation of knowledge. Scribes meticulously copied ancient texts in dimly lit scriptoria, ensuring the continuation of literary and religious traditions. Archaeological findings at various monastic sites reveal numerous manuscripts reflecting not only the theological pursuits of monks but also the threads of history interwoven within their pages. The manuscripts would often include commentaries, treatises on philosophy, and hymns composed by monks, chronicling spiritual and secular concerns of their time. Records reveal a notable increase in manuscript production during the 14th century, aligned with efforts to educate the clergy and laypeople alike. The existence of libraries within monastic walls facilitated this trend, as monks diligently catalogued and categorized their holdings. Many of these texts have survived, providing glimpses into the intellectual currents of the era and revealing how monastic scholars grappled with significant theological questions of their time. In the quiet solitude of the cloisters, an unmistakable tension existed between spiritual aspiration and worldly realities. Monks were not immune to the conflicts that afflicted society, rather, they were fervent participants. Their letters and writings often articulated concerns over ecclesiastical corruption, the question of wealth within the church, and the vitality of spirituality amidst material distractions. Within the context of the 14th century, significant historical events shaped these perspectives. The Avignon papacy, which began in 1309, represented a profound shift in church power dynamics. Monks, typically seen as bastions of faith, voiced unease regarding the lavish lifestyle of the papacy and its implications for the broader church. This divergence from previously established ideals of asceticism stirred factions and debates that would echo throughout history. The impact of the Great Plague in the mid-14th century also demanded re-evaluation of monastic roles. As society faced the unprecedented death toll of millions, monasteries grappled with their responsibilities towards their communities. Records indicate that monks became caretakers of the sick and dying, further entwining their lives with the broader populace. The responsibility placed upon them was immense, and many devoted themselves tirelessly to the service of affected individuals, emphasizing compassion amidst the tragedy. Yet, the aftermath of the plague also brought about a tension within monastic life. The demands of tending to the sick, coupled with the loss of monastic members to the disease, disrupted traditional ways of living. As monasteries faced dwindling numbers, the question of reform and adaptation emerged, echoing sentiments of prior centuries. As we consider the broader impact of monasticism on society and culture, we find a realm of human connection. Monasteries facilitated pilgrimages, wherein individuals sought solace, healing, or spiritual enlightenment. These journeys forged ties between the laity and cloistered monks, allowing for the exchange of ideas and fostering communal worship. As pilgrims traversed the landscape, they not only engaged with their faith but often contributed economically to monastic establishments, further intertwining their destinies. The sanctuaries created by monks offered refuge from the chaos of the world. They served as spaces for reflection and contemplation, providing a stark contrast to the often turbulent existence outside their walls. Meanwhile, the presence and teachings of renowned monks sustained communities, guiding them towards paths of righteous living amid uncertainty. Furthermore, as we delve further into this discourse, it becomes essential to recognize the lesser chronicled narratives of women within the context of monasticism. While primarily male-dominated, many women formed convents, creating their own spaces to exercise spiritual authority and engage in artistic endeavors. Among them were influential abbesses who shaped local economies and altered conventional perceptions of women's roles in society. Historical texts and archaeological findings reveal that nuns participated in various arts and crafts, similar to their male counterparts. They composed music, wrote spiritual treatises, and created illuminated manuscripts. Thus, while the narratives of monks predominate, it is essential to honor the contributions of women who, amid limitations, cultivated spiritual centers, often enacting profound influence upon their communities. With that understanding, it is clear that the legacy of 14th-century monks, and the monastic experience as a whole, extends far beyond the confines of their cloisters. Their hard-won struggles informed theological discourse, artistic expressions, and their very identities crafted in the face of adversity. The waves of monastic influence have reverberated throughout history, impacting our understanding of community, devotion, and the human experience. The echoes of past centuries resonate. The interplay of hardship and artistry offers invaluable lessons as we navigate our contemporary existence. As communities continue to shape and redefine spirituality today, the fundamentals of monastic life, a commitment to shared purpose, introspective reflection, and the pursuit of truth, remain relevant. In contemplating the legacy left by these devoted ascetics, it invites us to participate in an ongoing exploration of faith and community that transcends temporal boundaries. The teachings passed down through generations call us to reflect on the essence of connection and empathy. As we transition from this reflection on the legacies embedded within monastic lives, we prepare to delve into the discoveries unearthed within monastic sites. The material remnants, carefully excavated and analyzed, await our understanding of how these physical artifacts narrate the stories of resilience, innovation, and faith amid adversity. Such exploration promises to unveil deeper insights into the collective journey of those who lived within these sacred walls.